Right, a very good morning to everybody and welcome again to Ishtara. Everybody knows what the meaning of Ishtara is, right? It's a center of light. Right. So we decided that, well, I have not had any major discussions with the family since the last time was in March. That's more than 7 months ago. So it was the push by Nilash to get up and say something again. But I think it was timely, and I thought we will have a topic that we will call the spike protein, but that's not the major thing in all of it. I've decided this morning that, yes, we will be talking about spike protein, but we need to kind of have a discussion on a whole paradigm, and a sort of a discussion that is going to incorporate the spike protein, but at the end of the day, the theme really is the regeneration of man. That's what came to me this morning, because I normally don't sit down for hours trying to prepare a talk. You know, it just comes in a moment, and then I would say, I am not here with a plan or a script or anything, but I hope and I would assume that we get the inspiration with all of you being here, and it's a live audience, that magic will happen somehow to lift our beings, to lift our consciousness, because this is what it's all about. So I would like to remind you again about what this life is all about. It may be a bit different, but I'm here to push the boundaries, to open new doors, and that's what I'm about. It's really to try to get past the old paradigm, the old way of thinking, and to create a new way of thinking. And this whole pandemic a few years ago was the beginning of an end of an old system. And what I mean by an old system is the system that served us in a beautiful way, in a powerful way, up to that point. And so what I have been doing throughout all of this is, and throughout my life, is trying to find the new way, the new wave, the new energies, simply because I know in my own life I've gone through different phases, and all of you have done that. And there was a time when Newtonian physics was the top of the physics. Then there was a time when Einstein came and changed the paradigm. And then today we live in a field and a world of quantum physics, quantum mechanics, quantum theory. And at the backdrop of that, the NASA scientists came up many, many years ago and started talking about dark energies and dark matter. And do you know that dark energies is equivalent to almost 68% of the entire universe? And dark matter is approximately 27%. This is all, you could find this in the NASA scientific world. And that amounts to 95% of the universe. And what is left? About 5% of the universe is what we perceive in this physical reality. And we are lost when it comes to dark energies and dark matter. So we are only in science, and the science of the day, even the modern science, we are only in tune with about 5% of the universe. Is that enough for you all? Definitely not. And so there's so much more beyond the 5%. And so that's what we start to delve into. That's what we need to move into, to understand the entire universe. Because all of you sitting here, you are nothing but the divine, the entire divine manifesting itself in a form. All right? That's what you are. You're not separated from that. It is not in you. None of that is really what reality is. What the truth is that we all are a part of that. So let us try to recap something that I've always said for many years. What is this divine energy, or what people will call God by different names? And I will just refer to it in my talk as the divine, okay? So we don't have to go into different names. So what is this divine, and where is it? And the conclusion simply is the entire universe is the divine. So if you're looking for it, you can't find it, because 95% of it is outside of our 5 senses and what we can perceive. So that 95% is really what we are searching to find. And so human beings, we are nothing but perfectly the manifestation of the divine. But something went awry. Something went wrong with humanity. And I wouldn't go in details with that, but let's go back to what the divine is. And the divine is made up of three components. We call it the Holy Triad. And three components. And none of the components of these three is less than or greater than the other two. So keep that at the back of your mind. So let us define that. So the first aspect of it is what we call the void, which translated in English simply means the nothingness, the emptiness, the darkness. And we come back to dark energies and dark matter. And out of that came light. And light is simply a generic term for the field that we live in, what I call the quantum field. You can call it heaven if you want. It's exactly the same. You can call it space. It's all the same. We already live in that field. This space between my hands has no boundaries. It is infinite. There's no end to it. So that's the second aspect of the divine. And the third aspect of the divine is what comes out of that and creates the 5% reality in the universe that we can all perceive with our five senses. So now if we're looking for this divine, where do we look? We don't need to look. We need to understand that everything in the universe is the divine. The universe is the divine. That's why it's called universe. It's one thing. And it's the entire everything that exists. So there's not something out there like a huge being out there, an advanced being out there that we need to go down on our knees and worship or talk to, even to pray to. We need to come to a place where we can understand that we are the divine, and we need to get back home. We need to get back to where we really should be. And that's the problem we are faced with. So that's the Holy Triad. So the physical world, and I'm going to stress this again, the physical reality that we have in the world, in the universe, is not less than the other two. I will give you an example. I can make three sounds. I'll use an E. E, E, E. It's the same E sound at three different frequencies, but it's the same E sound. All right? So that's what the divine is. So do we talk to the divine? If you become awakened and realize that you all are the divine, then I'm going to ask you a question that you could keep within yourself. How are you going to live your life? That's a good question, right? If you know and you come to know that you are the divine, how are you going to live your life? And that's a very important one to start thinking about, important one to start looking at in your life. And if you figure out that in the near future, then go and live your life like that. When I was younger, much, much younger, somebody said, God is love, right? And I always wondered, what is this all about? But I realized that it is the manifestation of this great divine in human beings is what generates love. So the core of all of you here is love. So at the core level of yourselves, do you need love? The answer is a big, big N-O. You understand that? If you are the divine, and if you are love, then why do you search for love? And you hear all the time, every day, poor me, nobody loves me. You know, that kind of jargon, that kind of discussion. Then we must be in a bad state to be like that. Because we have not come to recognize that we are the divine, and we are only here to manifest something which is the divine, and it is true love. And the day we have that love blocked inside of us somewhere is going to create a disease. And then we go to the medical profession and we get a diagnosis and you have disease A, B, C, down to G, and X and Y and Z. But it is all where love is blocked in our lives. So I use a very simple method to talk to people. Go and practice love. That's all you need to do. But everything outside of your core requires love. Because with love, everything can be elevated back to the source. Everything. And so, how can I initiate all of us to the process? And I'm not initiating you to the process of how to start loving. All right? Suppose you were to be thirsty and you were going to drink a glass of water. Why can't we fill that glass before we drink it with love? Then we are lifting the vibrations of the water. We are lifting the consciousness of the water back to where it's supposed to be. If we are eating food, why don't we spend a moment and pour love into it? And then you are transforming the food. If you are in this space here, why, and any space that you go, why can't you just practice the art of loving where silently you can actually send out a vibration of love to the whole space? People talk recently about home invasions. How can you change all of that? So if you stand up in your house on a regular basis and just stand, and you know where this love comes from? It's a center within the core of your being, which is your heart center, the heart chakra. That's where it's at. And if you can feel that love flowing out of you into the whole space and filling the space, now the vibrations of the house, every room, is going to change. And when you do that, you're carrying a vibration that someone with a lower vibration will not be able to enter into that space. They may come by, watch it, get a feeling about it, and just walk away. And go to another place that is more in sync with their vibration. Everything resonates. All right? So let us help each other here right now by putting that into practice. Okay? And you're going to do it through sound. So I want you to take, and we will do it with 3 rounds. Just 3 rounds. So I want all of you to take a deep breath. And I want you to hum. Another deep breath. And imagine everyone in this room is going to be influenced or affected by the love that is carried by the sound in an entire space as well. So another breath. And one more. Take a deep breath. I've just taught you one of the most powerful self-healing tools that if you practice on a daily basis, you can heal your body. Because we know of light and we know of sound. The yoga of light and sound. This is a little device here. I brought it in the last minute. So there's something there that spins in there. It is sealed. So if I just touch this, and you wait, you will see that starts to move. And it is photons, and photon is the smallest particle of light. And the photon, if you can see it, it's starting to move the thing in there. Right? There's no air that can be influenced because it's a glass container. And if I were to increase the photon emission to a higher level, you see it starts to spin even faster. So light is ready for function. And the way it works is that the light, the photons, is hitting one side, which absorbs the light, and it pushes it. And the other side is reflects as well. So that's what is happening. It's not magic. It is the world of science of what light. Light can do things. Light is in your body for function. All right? And sound generally is for regeneration, rejuvenation, transformation. So here's what happens to a grain of corn when it gets into the soil. What happens? Magic. Bursts open in the presence of what is called dark energies, and it becomes a plant. That's a miracle in itself, right? And what happens to that plant? It comes through the earth. It finds its way. Can you imagine if you go and squeeze the tip of that plant, you're going to destroy it? You will damage it. It is so tender. It is so soft. How does it come out of the earth without damaging itself? That's another miracle. And that's the miracle of light and sound right there. It is sound, darkness. And don't ever feel that darkness is ignorance and darkness is what, you have to remove. Darkness is the original state of this room. The original state of the planet is darkness. A caterpillar has to become a butterfly. So where does it go? Into the cocoon. And dark energies will transform it into a higher vibration. Now it has wings and it can fly. And it has more beauty as well than the caterpillar crawling on the ground. And all of us here, in the dark energies of the mother's womb, repeated, the dark energies of the mother's womb, to create a complete human being. Remember, the darkness that I spoke about is the first aspect of the divine? Out of that comes light. Out of that comes life. So I'm kind of reminding you of what I've said before and making it in a way that you can appreciate it and understand it. What you've just done is you have filled the space with your love vibrations from your heart. And if you become more focused on it, then you can heal your body. So now I'm going to ask you to do one only, one deep breath, and focus on every cell in your body. The 60 trillion cells in your body. All right? One deep breath, and focus yourself on that sound going into every cell. So let's lift the consciousness of the cells, just with one breath. But you could do it as long as you want when you get home. So one breath. That was such a beautiful sound. We all got in sync with each other. They all resonated together, and it created powerful healing energy for all of us. So thank you very much for participating in even that one. All right? Because I felt it in my whole being too. All right. So 2020 was the beginning of a pandemic. And what was most interesting for me during that time was a virus which actually had the ability to destroy lives. All right? In fact, what came out of that for me really was death was facing us every single day. And the possibility of death to all of us as well, which generated a huge amount of fear in the entire world. I think in all of us sitting here, we are just at the age where we can say that this is the first time in our lifetime where every country was actually recording deaths by the moment. There were so many sites that you could have seen, and every day the numbers just going up like that. So what I got out of that, since death was all facing us every single day, every single moment, and it was all around. The next person you're standing next to could be the one to cause you to die. That's how bad it got. Right? We didn't realize that we are the divine. We did not realize that we have a huge brain. We didn't realize that a virus doesn't have a brain. And yet, we all succumb to that. And that literally uplifted us to the level where we recognize that we are nothing. We were all reduced to something that was like absolutely nothing. There's a pile of something, that we are not human beings, we are not the divine manifesting in a form, and that we can deal with this. You have a powerful immune system, but as soon as you have fear entering in your system. You know what happens to the immune system? It goes all the way down. And it can happen in minutes. Fear. So we were struck with death facing us every moment. And everywhere, the possibility of death was lurking. And what I got of that, really, seriously, is it is time to face death and overcome death. And you might think, Harry, where are you going with this? You're mad? We all have to die? Because for 40 plus years, all my patients that I've asked over the years, do you think someday we will die? And every single human being have said to me, yes, of course, we all have to die. I don't know. Where did that come from? And some of you sitting here would still think that way. And some of you will get conned into accepting the fact that what people have programmed us to believe is that when you die, your soul will go to heaven and live in heaven forever, where there's perfect peace and where there's no suffering and everything will be okay. And then on the other hand, they taught us, well, the soul will come back again. And because you lived such and such a life, you're going to have a better quality life, maybe less suffering. You'll have an easy life. All right? The question is, which is correct? Which is right? And I would like to tell you that both are the same. There's not a difference. Originally, it was all geographic. 3 religions in the center of the earth believe in heaven, Jannah, or paradise. And all the peripheral religions on the earth believe in reincarnation. And it's just how information spread like that. Go back and look at it. See if what I'm telling you is not the truth. So because they made us feel that there's an afterlife, and I know some of you may not agree with this. So it made us, and I feel that they con us into accepting the fact that when we die, there's something going to happen. Well, let me tell you something. All of us here is like a divine being. All of you have trillions of cells, and every day millions die. And they are just replaced, and you are still you. Everybody get that? You lose millions of cells every day. They are replaced by other cells, but you are still you. I'm still Harry Ramnarine. Every day, millions of cells die. So take that as a clue. Human beings will come and go and they will die, but the divine, which is everything, will always be the divine. See the parallel? So now, what is the future of humanity? Where have we arrived at this moment? We have arrived at a place where, remember 2020 used to be called a perfect vision? Remember the optometrists would tell us that? You have 2020 vision. It's a little bit more than that. It's about a new vision as well. And if we are not prepared to move into that area, we're going to be left behind. And it's happening very quickly. Very quickly. Because a lot more death is coming, and a lot more interesting diseases are coming, and so we'll all succumb. So here's the moment in history on this planet to try to make a change, and that is what we're going to be talking about. So it is time to wake up and understand that I'm going to share with you my own personal view. It doesn't matter whether, all I'm asking you just to listen. And to listen, the art of listening is you do not agree with me, you don't disagree with me. So if you could be there, you will find the truth yourself. But if you're agreeing with me, then you're not going to find it. And if you disagree, you're not going to find it. What I mean by that, it will not become a reality. The only way in every thing in your life, if you learn the art of listening, the mind stops, you will understand. That's where understanding comes from. The word understand has a huge amount of humility in it. It's standing under. And it's only through humility that you will get the truth coming into yourself. So, we can overcome death. Let us start the process. Right here on the 6th of January 2020, before the pandemic was called, I had a meeting. We had about 61 people, and we started a 10-year program by 2030 to get to a place where we can feel in ourselves that we are on the route to overcoming disease, degeneration, and death. We've gone close to 4 years now, right? And that's where we are. Some of you might have been here. Who of you here was at that meeting on the 6th of January? We had 61 people. I know you all were here. I know you were here. You were here. Anybody else here? Right. And it's now 4 years, all right, since then. Well, the 6th of January coming in 2024 will be 4 years. We have made a lot of progress in that because I have spent many, many hours every single night working towards that. And I'm not doing it for me. I am not a person who wants to get there and then turn around and say, let me help you. My way of doing this is to work with individuals, and because the individual is just like me, we're all going to get there if we take on the challenge. There's a huge challenge, all right? So let's now introduce the concept of what is spike protein. But I would like to talk about it, but maybe what I could do is to talk a little bit about something that you need to know a little bit more about. How many of you here know, from what we have discussed in the past, that you have over 600 trillion God cells inside of you right now as you're sitting? How many of you are aware of that? God cells, right? So some of you. So the science of the day has told us that we have about 60 trillion cells. And that's an average, because it's impossible to calculate exactly. So people talk about 37 trillion to 100 trillion. So the average is, let's use 60 trillion. That's what I do. But you have 10 times the number of those cells inside your body right now. I call them God cells, since I discovered them probably more than 30-something years ago using algorithms. They're everywhere in your body. Everywhere you have fluid, you have these God cells. In fact, water is a living organism or a substance. It's a living substance. It is filled with these God cells. Take an experiment. Take some water, whether it's filtered, sterilized, clean, ultraviolet light applied to it, and put it, you could even close the container, seal it, and put it in the sunlight, and you will see what will happen in about 4 to 5 days. Anybody knows what will happen to the water? It's what? Algae. So sunlight, light, striking and hitting these God cells in the water will generate the first biologically living cell called algae. Do you know, if we didn't have that mechanism, there will be no fish in the ocean? That's where the food comes from. Starting, that's the first level, the first part of the chain, food chain in the ocean. Because, you know, the small fish would eat the algae, and then the bigger ones would eat the smaller ones, and the bigger ones would eat the bigger ones. And that's how it goes. So, algae, biological cell, comes from the God cells in there. The scientists of today call it the microbiome. And you're familiar with that, all of you, right? Before that time, many years ago in Germany, I met with a doctor who was a student of the guy who first described this. He was the first one to discover this. And he referred to it as microzymes. And he did say, too, they are indestructible. But I didn't find his literature until recently. He actually gave a lecture in 1985 in Barcelona about microzymes, and these microzymes were indestructible. That's what he said. So, in our work, we found these cells. The student of his, I met in Germany many years in the 80s, and he referred to them as endobionts. Endo is from within, and bios is life. So these were cells within our bodies, and they were living cells. And they range from nanoparticle size to bacterial size. So now let's apply that to your body. Everywhere in your body where you have fluid, anybody can name one fluid system in your body? I'll point to you. No? Your blood, your lymph, the fluid in your brain, the bile system, the fluid in your eyes. Everywhere you have fluid, you have these cells. All right? And there's a whole hierarchy about these cells, these God cells. You have 5 areas that are the most important, and I will name them for you. One is the lymph. The lymph is loaded with these cells. The next one is the blood. Those are the 2 main fluid systems. But then the third one is the CSF in the brain. The next one is the bile, the liquid bile. And the next one is in the bone marrow. Those are the 5 main ones. And those 5 main ones, actually, they are at the consciousness level. So they are influenced by how you are thinking moment to moment. So you are influencing those. If, for instance, you get up in the morning and you're not feeling right, you're feeling down for whatever reason, maybe a bad dream or something, then it is influencing those microbiomes. And these microbiomes are versatile. They can be transformed within 24 hours into anything. Seriously. Then all of that at a higher level is now influenced together through your vagus nerve, influencing and downloading itself into what? Your gut flora. And that is, the vagus nerve is like a fiber optic cable. It takes information from here up to the brain and these higher levels of being and awareness, and it takes information from those levels down to the gut flora. So one is always in sync with the other 5, all right? So where does death come from? As a young doctor, there are 2 things that struck me when I was in medical school. And the first thing that they told us is when we reach puberty, that was a lecture in physiology. At the time of puberty, you start to produce hormones. The boys producing testosterone and the girls producing female hormones, estrogen and progesterone. They told us physiologically that the thymus gland is starting to atrophy. That's kind of crazy. That's kind of weird. It doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense to me at that time. Why, when we reach the beginning of starting adult life, moving into the area where we become, adult human beings, why is it that the thymus gland is going downhill? Someone in Germany, a doctor in Germany, told us, if your thymus gland would have continued to function like when you were a baby before puberty, you would never age. Your body will be regenerating itself all the time. So now we're getting a hint why we get disease, degeneration, and eventually death. Because your thymus gland is a huge part of your immune system, producing T cells. They take the cells from the bone marrow, the B cells, and they actually train them how to deal with disease and how to regenerate the body. The second thing that happens to your body at puberty, when you start producing what is now called sex hormones, guess what happens? Your pineal gland starts to shut down too. That's kind of interesting. Pineal. Now, how many of you are aware, and you would have had children playing in a corner in a room, and they're talking to their friends that are not available physically? How many of you are aware of that? Show your hands. Don't be scared. Right? I think we all who have children, we walk into a room and they're talking to their friends. They even have some of them have names for their friends. Right, that you cannot see. Why? Do you all know that as you're sitting here, your eyes are trained, your eyes were created to see into the next world, into the quantum field? Let me tell you why. But you see, the science of the day that taught us dumbed us down. You have rods and cones at the back of your eyes. You're aware of that, right? You're aware of that? Let's say yes. Right? You have rods and cones. And do you know that the rods outnumber the cones? The cones were actually to see the physical world. But they told us day vision. And the rods were actually for night vision. But it's really the other world. You understand now? They did not tell us that we could see into the other world. Do you know that Native American Indians, I remember getting in tune with a few guys, and we were night walking. What they did is they brought a little stick with at the bottom of it a round bulb that glow in the night. And what you need to do is to focus on that, not to watch where you're going. And suddenly, after some minutes of focusing on that, then your whole vision changes. You actually get, something is activated in you and you start to see things. Right? That was discussed by Noetic Society in the US. So we were participating in an experiment with that. And we had a funny story. One person with us, she actually saw a bear in front of her. And she turned around and screamed and ran in the opposite direction. Right? There's not a physical bear. She was seeing something in another dimension, right? Anyway, so you have rods and cones. So when we reach puberty, the rods, which is supposed to give you vision into the next dimension or the next world, the quantum field, starts to go downhill. Right? I will leave it there because I leave you to think about this whole business of sexuality, testosterone, and hormones. We probably come back a bit to it if I remember towards the latter part, right? But that should lead you to think of something interesting, the role of sexuality in our lives and where it has taken. I would just say, for instance, that sex is intimately related to death, and I'll leave you with that. Right? Go home and think a little bit about that. And then, what was that? All right. Yes. We'll refer to male and female. Sex is the act of sex, of connection. I'll give you a hint. Man, let me tell you what it is, so you're not lost. The original man and the original human beings that appeared on this planet they never came through sex. They were actually androgynous beings. They were God men, and they had both male and female within themselves. They were complete. They didn't see themselves as a feminine aspect or a masculine aspect. By the way, this may shock you, but as long as what is God has been there, or the divine, man has been there too. There was never a moment in this whole universe where this divine entity existed all by itself and everything was nothingness, and then they say, well, okay, let us make man, let us make the universe and man and so on. That is just stories of the science. Science generally tend to think only in a linear fashion. Some of them start seeing, other dimensions. But they would not want to go beyond the third and fourth dimension. Because when you get to another level, it confuses the scientists. When you get to the level of the quantum field, it still confuses the scientists. I have met so many quantum physicists, and they talk quantum physics, but they will not enter there. Otherwise, most of them lose their jobs. Most of them are put in the fringe, right? Because when you get to that level, the whole concept of what reality changes. In fact, if you are a scientist and you do experiment, do you know that your intention, your information influences the results? And therefore, science becomes non-science. So they will prefer to remain where they are. The problem is, if you want in your own life to bridge the world between science and spirituality, it is quantum mechanics or quantum theory, quantum field. And the scientists don't really want to bring that together because, see, this is way out and this is the other way out. So we all have to bring all three together in our lives. Then we can understand reality a bit better. So everything becomes messy in the quantum field. It can be changed from one thing to another. 1 minute, here's what an electron is, really. When you look at it, it's a particle, and when you turn your back and you walk away, it's a wave. Isn't that confusing? But it carries both. But I will not go into, I'm not a quantum physicist, I'm just still a student of quantum physics. And that's what my whole life is all about, trying to understand that field. So I'm not an expert in it. I don't have a degree in physics. But as I said, I do a lot of research and meditation to understand the field, because that's what we need to understand. Because out of that field, we will grow. Tell you what, that field actually is where heaven is. That field is the field of us as a future human being. I could tell you what the future of human being is going to be. We will lift our awareness, our vibrational level, our consciousness, and I'll tell you, you can enter the field and you are totally you. And you can come back when you want. So how many of you think that Jesus is stuck in that area? Because it is said in the scriptures that he rose and disappeared in the clouds. All right? So how many of you think he's stuck there sitting and waiting for the second coming? How many of you think like that? That's a crazy way of thinking. The man Jesus has the ability to be there and to make appearance here. And he's been doing that thousands of times, helping people. And there are a whole lot of beings over the ages who have achieved that, and they all come and help us all the time and go back and forth. All of you have had those experiences in your life. But if you give this story, I'll tell you, that's what was the guardian angel. But they are all human beings who have actually lifted their lives, their consciousness, and they exist at that level, and they come, move back and forth. There's no barrier. So people are sitting here waiting for Jesus to come back a second coming. You know what I told a Catholic woman once? She's very nice. We have a good relationship. I said, you know, girl, if Jesus comes back somewhere in the future, you're waiting, you will not accept him at all. She said, doctor, she got off her chair, now she started to be upset with me. I said, no, sit down. I said, if he comes back, he's not going to be teaching what he taught 2,000 years ago. He has to give you a modern version, how to get to the spiritual level in a better way, a faster way. Teach you some more techniques. And you go look at him and say, what a fad. And turn your back. She said, you know, that could be true. So that's where we are. All right. So the microbiome. How can you influence your microbiome? I'll give you 2 hints. Do you know that if you can feed your microbiome, they will feed you? So the microbiome, do you know what long-chain carbohydrates are? It's called soluble fiber. Long-chain carbohydrates. We feed ourselves today with short-chain carbohydrates, disaccharides and polysaccharides. Let me give you a disaccharide is, you know what? Sugar. There's 2 molecules. A single molecule is like glucose alone, or fructose. But we feed ourselves and we try to nourish ourselves with short-chain carbohydrates, and that is dangerous. We need long-chain carbohydrates. It's soluble fiber. So anything that is slimy, just think of all the foods that are slimy, all the ground provisions. You know, if you cut an okra, what is happening is slimy. All these are long-chain carbohydrates. When it gets into your system, it breaks down slowly, so it doesn't spike. You know, an old German doctor many years ago told me, he says, Harry, if you want to live a long life, make sure your insulin level remains as low as possible in every 24 hours. So anybody here knows how to spike your insulin? Is to use sugar. And walk around the place and look at everybody how they're drinking juices and so on, filled with sugar. In fact, there are juices that says no sugar added. You believe that? Well, they are correct. Legally, they are correct because they did not add sugar, which is sucrose. But you could add high fructose corn syrup, which might be even more deadly to your liver cells. And they could write on the label, no sugar added. And then you say, no sugar added. You could drink a pint and then use another pint. Right? Today, we see so many young people with degeneration in the liver cell damage, fatty liver. And when you have fatty liver, you have belly fat. So if you look around yourself, don't look too far, don't look too much. As long as you have belly fat, you have insulin resistance. And you have been guilty of consuming too much sugar. That literally has an effect on your liver function, and which in turn starts to store fat here. Then it's insulin resistance. You're behaving like if you already have diabetes. Right? And you're going to get all the complications of diabetes with time. Right, so the microbiome. Another so that's soluble fiber. But you can also change the bad ones very easily by using clove. So that's a good tip. Clove, 1, 2, or 3, or 4 cloves, and you can make a tea. And it is filled with polyphenols. It's filled with something called eugenol, and they will transform your gut flora. In fact, in my practice, the people who live long lives, they have good, healthy flora. Right? They're more peaceful, they're more relaxed, they don't argue with people, they're not carrying a lot of bitterness in life and so on. Because remember, all those could change your microbiome in your gut. Everything downloads here. So I will just talk a little bit about how death comes about. Have we ever wondered, somebody's lying on a bed? I was in hospital for about 5 years in Port Spain. And you know, you're doing your ward rounds every day and you're seeing patients. And you talk to every patient, you go back and sit with them, have a chat and so on, get to know them better. And then sometimes suddenly you come and this person died. I started to wonder how it happens. And then the nurse said to me, "Girl, doc, your life gone, you know, and they're dead." So I thought maybe there's some other mechanism. Because a healthy person could die too. From a bullet, from an accident, from injury, from drowning and so on. A healthy person, very healthy person could die. So that's a different story. So I started thinking a lot about how does death occur. And I came to the conclusion that it is something called intestinal toxemia. Let me break it down. Intestinal, from the intestine. Toxin created within there. Emia, it gets into the blood. How many of you here, show your hands, that you know some relative or know someone and you visit them and you're seeing something that you can't explain, but you know that you're not going to last too long? How many have experienced that? A lot of you. Because something has started to generate. I used to call it the death hormone long ago. The death hormone. You start to see it being released into the blood, and the person will, in a day or 2 or 3 days, they will pass on. And there's no return. It's very difficult to change that. So that's how death occurs. There's something that is released, and it's initiated from the gut flora. Right? Let's think of it again. From the intestines, if your gut flora is healthy, let's say it's 100% healthy, they will work for you. They will create vitamins, minerals, food. They will create short-chain fatty acids, all the things that you need. You know, your gut flora can create it if you feed them the right things, like the soluble fiber and so on. But when our thoughts are different, when we are frustrated, when we are angry with the world, when we're carrying a lot of bitterness from, I call it toxic energies that we have. And all of us sitting here would have gone through life where somebody or some people might have done things to us one way or the other, and we are still holding on to that today. It's somewhere within ourselves. We're all guilty of that. I am, and all of you are guilty. So that itself is running at the background all the time. And it's now downloading slowly and slowly into your gut flora and changing your gut flora. So the gut flora is no longer healthy. It no longer is going to work for you. And when that happens, it is slowly creating disease, degeneration, and death. All right? Everybody got that? So the more healthy your gut flora is, the longer you could live your life, and the healthier you would be. In fact, all diseases that we see comes about because of basically 3 things. The first thing, and I'm doing all of this so you understand when we start talking about spike protein and we bring it together. The 3 things are simply this. All of us sitting here, we are loaded with all the ancestral patterns. So the genetics and what they carry in themselves and loaded within the genes, the carrier of information to the future generation, we are all loaded with that. So we haven't been able to escape all of that because we are carrying all our ancestors. If you just start tracing them back, you will reach a point where you get lost and you don't know who is it further than that. All right? But we are all loaded with that. So our genetics, our genome, is loaded with the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? We have all good traits too. We have the bad, and the bad is when it's not manifesting itself. The ugly is when it manifests. So a person can have a script of cancer, of let's say the left breast. It is not cancerous. It is not You cannot find a cell cancer. But the script is there. The information is there. And the information will materialize itself when something happens in your life. All right? So, in fact, now we have the ability to look at all the causes of death in human beings. And the largest in Trinidad and Tobago, that's in our practice, the largest list is actually cardiovascular. Right? Then we have things like infections and cancers and so on. I will just read through what I have here. So cardiovascular is a large list. Accidents and injuries, another one. Infections of all types is another one. Cancer, mortality from what I call toxic energies that could come from the outside or from within. Then you have chronic lung diseases. You have neurodegenerative diseases. You have suicide. And then you have all the chemical toxins, whether they come from sometimes from pharmaceutical or from the environment, like the very deadly chemicals that we spray our foods, to get rid of pests and so on, and bugs, and residue of that can accumulate in your body and also create disease. So those are the causes. And today we could find the script in people. You create an algorithm for these, and you will find the script. But you may find a person, I found a 13-year-old with cancer. And when we trace it, it's in the left breast. But she only carries right now the information of cancer. If you understand me over the years, I would have always said everything in the physical universe is made up of three components: matter, energy, information. They're all the same. It's just different levels of the same thing. So there's a material component. I'll give you an example. If you take a piece of gold, it is matter. It looks like gold, it's shiny, yellowish looking. And that's gold. At the energy or vibrational level of gold is the atoms of gold, which has approximately 79 electrons, 79 protons, and 79 neutrons, right? You can't see those. That's at the vibrational level of gold. And then you have the informational level of gold, which, to my mind, is the subatomic particle level, where you don't have protons and neutrons. You have quarks. And quarks have position. And position defines information. Right? And I like to explain things very simply to people so they understand. So that's the third level, the informational level of gold. And I like to explain things because if I take my hand like this and I come to you and I do that, that has a meaning, right? But if I do this, it has a different meaning. And if I do this, it has a different meaning. So the same position in different position has a different meaning. You got that? So how quarks are arranged within the atoms carries data, information. So that's the informational field of gold. And if you want a little bit more of the physics, is that a proton is two up-facing quark and a down-facing quark. And a neutron is two down-facing and one up. So it's position. Right? When we were in medical school, there was something called the policeman's tip position. So there was a condition of a nerve condition that causes people to be like this. So they couldn't bring their hands like this. So this was called the policeman's tip position. So your policeman will, rather than charge you, he will do this, and then you put some money in his hands. And then you're not charged anymore, right? Remember that, Deborah? Right. So, where are we? We're talking about, see, the policeman story threw me off. So, matter, energy, information. So you understand that. Everything in the physical universe that you can touch, taste, feel, and so on has three components. So the informational level, so when people have cancer and you have cancer cells, long before that there was an informational field, a script of cancer. So now, in a way, we can predict that in people. We can test and see which of these algorithms is now positive in the person. We can say, okay. And it is interesting because we can see cardiovascular, and then we start asking the questions. Okay, tell me a little bit about your family story, history, and you have diabetes, and you have high blood pressure, and you have heart attacks in the family. And then if you find cancer, you would see that there are members of the family patterns, with cancer. So what we are saying is that essentially the script, we are carrying all of that. In fact, we all, right now, because we have accepted it, we are carrying a script which is called disease, degeneration, and death. All of us. And it's there whether we like it or not. We have accepted that inherently. It's part of us. I've always said in the past that there is another script, which is our absolute natural state, which is health, which comes from life, which comes from the source of life. So why don't we get rid of this script and move into this? And it involves a very simple process, but rather complicated, simply because we all don't understand it, we don't believe it, we don't think it will happen. It is all possible. That's what I'm standing here. It is all possible to remove the script and change it back to our original natural state. I tell patients, if water could do it, why on earth you can't do it? It happens to water all the time. If you put water on your stove and you put on the fire, you know what happens to the molecules of water? It increases the vibration of the molecules of water. It increases what you might say is the consciousness of the water. And then all the water disappears. It's gone. You can't see it. The water doesn't die. It does not break up into hydrogen and oxygen. It is still water, but it's invisible. And give it a chance, it will come down as rain when it's ready. It's called condensation. And what is happening is simply lowering the vibrational level of it. So water can do it. Is not water telling us a story? What percentage of your body is water? Anybody knows? How much? About 70%. Maybe a baby is even a lot more. So if you have a body that is 70% water, you know what water is, according to Harry Ramnarine? Liquid light. Water is liquid light. I repeated it twice, so you don't ever forget it. Water is light. H2O, two invisible gases. And if water could do it, and you're 70% water, does it sound reasonable that you can lift, if you want to, and you work on it, to lift the frequency of your cells so that you can lift that frequency? And let me tell you something interesting. If you could do that over the next few years, by 2030, let me tell you what will happen. The whole paradigm will change. And you would have also brought the whole concept of reincarnation and heaven to be exactly the same. You know what happened with those two concepts? It's like somebody take a motor vehicle, and I came with a camera, took the picture of the back of the car, and now you took a picture of the front of the car. And now we are arguing with each other. This is the car, no, this is the car. But it's the same car, seen from two different angles. So what I've just said to you is to bring the concept of reincarnation and heaven to be exactly the same. And let me explain it to you. If you can lift your consciousness, if you can lift the frequency of your water in your life, or let's forget the water, if you can lift the frequency of your life, if you can lift your vibrational level of your life, if you can lift your consciousness, guess what will happen? You would start automatically to transform your body from the old body that you got from your parents, those 60 trillion cells. With these God cells, they will remake this whole body. It's not fantasy world, you know. We're talking about reality. It is possible. And if you could do that, you can enter heaven as an invisible being and come back when you want. You all understand that? Do I have to explain that anymore? You all got it? You got it? So reincarnation and heaven is the same. And it is all possible for us. We are opening a new door to help people to understand that you can change your life. So let's go further now. Let's go further. How does death occur really? And I said it is intestinal toxemia. But the missing link, if we look into medicine, we will realize that there's inflammation in every disease. Inflammation in every disease, right? And the thing is, what is really triggering the inflammation? You know, we have all these advertisements of Omega XL and so on to treat inflammation. But that is just a product that we see within the matrix of the body, what I call the ground substance, where the cells are and the fluids and so on. We find inflammation, and it's in every disease. But there must be something causing it. And what I have come to is it is connected to what is called spike protein. Because I've been testing the whole concept of disease, degeneration, and death as an algorithm. And we created, we'll talk more about that, but we've created an algorithm for the spike protein, and then we find a total resonance between the two. So something that we didn't know about before the pandemic was actually being generated in our bodies, which created the whole change in the ground substance. And what I mean is in the ground substance, where the cells are, where the lymph is, where everything is happening. Nutrients are going into the cell from the fluid, from your blood into fluid. Oxygen is going in from the blood into the fluid space across the cell membrane. That's the ground substance that I'm talking about. So that's a whole terrain within our cells. And at that level, the normal physiology keeps you healthy. So waste, things like carbon dioxide could get out, and food and so on can come in, and oxygen. But when you end up with a disturbance in that area, in that zone, in that organ, then everything is blocked. In fact, in the talk we had before, we said where an organ is sick, it is nutritionally deficient as well, because you're not transporting stuff. And I did mention that moringa has a key role in enhancing the nutritional aspect of the sick organs in your body. And it is connected to the enzyme. It is MTHFR. I can't remember exactly what it is. It is methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. Quite a big bit to bite on. MTHFR. It's an enzyme which facilitates, let me explain that enzyme. When you eat food like chicken, if you take chicken, macerate it, sterilize it, and inject it in your body, it will kill you because it's foreign protein, right? But when it goes through your digestive system, enzymes would break it down to amino acids. It's no longer chicken. So it's no longer going to hurt you, except a few people might be allergic. But it gets into your bloodstream. But in order for that to nourish the cell, it has to go through a key enzyme that we just described, MTHFR, methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. And that facilitates nutrients going across the cell membrane into the cell to nourish the cell, right? The one thing that I found that is in nature that facilitates or enhances that enzyme action is moringa. So any cell, any disease where you have disturbance in function in the body, you will have a nutritional deficiency. Everybody got that? And if you're only treating the body but the nutritional aspect is affected, then the cells will not recover totally. But if you use moringa, even on a regular basis, you're going to activate that process and enhance the nutritional aspect of that enzyme function into your cells, and therefore you'll have better nutritional capacity. So that's the function of, and so that could be used in any disease. Right? Yes. Sorry? Are you using moringa leaves? Yes. And how do you boil them? Well, okay. So the question is, how do you use the moringa? You can, if you can get the leaves, you can dry. If you have trees, and you can pick the leaves when it's good weather, not when it's raining, and you dry them indoors, preferably in a cardboard box or a brown paper bag. And we keep turning it. Once it gets crispy, you can put it in your blender and blend it into a powder. And that can stay for a long time, even outside or in your refrigerator. And then a small amount of that, not a lot, don't take too much. It could be a level teaspoon. But I found that if you use ghee, ghee has a positive influence on the health of every organ system. I have never found ghee creating any disease in any organ, in all the research that I've done. Right? It is pure fat, but it is probably a very healing fat. Okay? And ghee has a lot of good effects on your gut flora too. I think the chemical is called the butyrates, which has a good effect on your gut flora. And it's in ghee. So ghee is a valuable should be a valuable aspect of your diet. We have never found in hundreds of testing, thousands of patients over the years, that ghee affects your heart at all. So what I have found over the last couple of years, 2 years, is that if you take ghee and use it as a carrier, a mix, so you can take your powdered moringa and take enough, put it in a bowl and add ghee until you get a paste. And then you could leave it outside and take half a teaspoon to a level teaspoon and put it in a cup with boiling water, make a tea and drink it. And the ghee helps. So we have found that if you use turmeric with ghee, it makes it even better as a nutrient to the body. You can use moringa with the ghee. You can. I did give out something in the past. Black seed, you know black seed. It is not black till or black sesame seed. Black seed is a different seed. That is extremely good for your immune system. And again, if you have the crushed black seed and you mix it with ghee and you leave it alone, you can just take a bit of that. So you have things that you could use to nourish and heal your body. Black seed. Well, people use the oil as well, but I prefer the seed itself because it has all the nutrients. The oils will carry quite a bit of the effects of the black seed, and so you can use the oil as well. But I prefer to use the black seed because this nutritionally is more complete, right? So I think we do have black seed available in our practice. And you can mix that, and the ghee preserves it. If you put it in the refrigerator, it will get solid because ghee will get hardened. So if you want to store a bit for a longer time, you can leave it in the refrigerator. But if you leave it outside, it will last weeks and weeks and weeks. And then you can make a new batch. So you have black seed with ghee, which will enhance the absorption. You see, ghee gets into every organ system. So it's a carrier for taking stuff into your entire body. And as I said, we have never found ghee causing any problems with your cardiovascular system. Right? And in fact, we have found people using ghee with prostate problems improve quite a bit after 3-4 months of using ghee. And we have had lots of patients with that kind of result. So in the Western world, most of the Western doctors will say ghee is loaded with cholesterol and is harmful to your health. But we have enough data in Trinidad and Tobago. You see, remember a time they told us that coconut oil is bad for you because it's saturated fats? But guess what? In Trinidad, we had a population maybe 700,000-800,000 people in those days, probably maybe less too. And everybody in the country, of all races, of all religious persuasions, use cooking oil. And you know what cooking oil was? Coconut oil, made by Coconut Growers Association, CG. And it was cooking oil, saturated fats. And we didn't have as much diabetes in those days, very rare, and we didn't have heart attacks in those days as well as we have it today. Now, I cannot give you all statistical figures, but that's what I remembered. In fact, when I came back from Jamaica in 1975, it was still rare to find heart attacks on the wards. I remember occasionally find one person in 2 wards that we had, the male and female wards. Very rare still in 1975, because at that time we were still using coconut oil. When we changed into the seed oils like corn oil and so on, then eventually soybean oil, and then canola oil, all these diseases started up. Go back and look at the time frame. But yet, everybody's telling us coconut oil is bad for your hair. It's saturated fats. And ghee is absolutely bad because it's filled with cholesterol. You know, 9 out of 10 patients, sometimes up 10 out of 10, doesn't know that all your female hormones and your male hormones are made from cholesterol. Patients don't know that. They don't know that when you go in the sunlight and you expose yourself to some sunlight, you make vitamin D. You could spend 2-3 hours in Maracas Beach with just your bath suit on, you know, women and men with the trunks, and you can make up to 10,000-15,000 international units of vitamin D. And you know where it comes from? Cholesterol. And most patients don't know that either. So they have labeled cholesterol as a molecule of terror. The minute you hear cholesterol, you're ready to fall down, drop dead with a heart attack. But did you know that that was an advertisement on the TV in those days? You have a nice-looking woman walking, and she comes out of a car, very well dressed, and they give you her statistics, her weight, and her age, and so on. And then at the bottom, they give you a cholesterol level of 240, I think it was, and she collapses. And that's what they portrayed on the television. So as soon as you hear cholesterol, you're ready to collapse. So that was an advertisement in those days. And yet, in the literature, the leaflet, it was said that taking this drug called Lipitor does not prevent a heart attack. That was written in it. Remember that ever? So when I show it to patients, they say, but they told us, no, this will help. So they didn't take me on it then, but it's written on the leaflet. But I think eventually they took it off. All right, so this is 10:14. We'll go a little bit more and then take a break. Just trying to figure out, they want me to make sure we have a break. So, well, first of all, there are brands that are made from vegetable source, and they come in a green tin as well. So you have to be careful because you don't want that, right? So the green tin one is the most popular one that we have had all through the years. And when we tested that, if you make your own ghee, it will be far better than that. But if you don't want to make it and you have to confine yourself, there are a few places in Trinidad that would sell stuff that comes out of Canada and the States. I think one is called Desi Ghee. So those are good quality as well. They are better than the commercially created one in the green label. So I would say, if you're looking at the best, that is this level. What you make is at this level, and there are others that are in plastic containers at that level, right? But we also teach people to make it. I don't know why most people say they don't have time. They don't have time. Me, I have all the time in the world. Yes. Well, you know apple cider vinegar is a fermented product, right? And it carries the mother, as they call it. And if you don't see the mother, if you take a little bit of apple cider vinegar and you pour, let's say, some sugar or maybe some honey and leave it alone, even though the mother is invisible, it will grow. Try that and leave it a few months. You'll see it grow. And then you can actually use that too. So you do have probiotics in apple cider vinegar. And when you drink that, it may not stay long enough to generate a whole lot of growth, but the product itself is helpful to your gut flora. So apple cider vinegar, a small amount on a regular basis is good. But I guess, we have so many things to use that, space them out. Don't get bored with the same thing over and over. That's how I do it, right? So just make your life happy. Because you get bored. You see, when you do the same thing over and over, you lose function. You lose the effect of it, right? So here's what I'm going to do. At this point, I'm still keeping spike protein in the back of my mind because it will tie into all of these things. So don't get worried. So let me teach you a technique that will help your gut flora, and it will help with spike protein too. Because when we get back, I'm going to show you how spike protein is connected to your gut flora and connected to the process of disease, degeneration, and death as well. So what I want you to do is come forward on your chair. Leave the chair behind a little bit and come forward. So you're not leaning back, right? And let me see if we don't really need a lot of these things here. So I want you to sit comfortably, right? And keep your back straight. So I'm going to teach you a breathing technique that's going to help with your health. It would also help with spike protein, help your gut flora. And what you're going to do is, I want you to pull in your belly as much as you can, and I want you to hold that, keep the muscles in that position, right? It's going to be difficult to breathe, but when you breathe, you're going to train yourself to open up alveoli, air sacs, that you have never opened up for a long time. all right? And this has an extremely powerful effect on your vagus nerve, right? Which will put you into a healing mode as well. So you're going to sit. Now, I'm just going to demonstrate. You don't need to use your hand in the exercise, but I'm going to show you. If I breathe in, the belly also comes out a little bit. So if I take this in now, and it's now in, and I breathe, you'll find it difficult to breathe. But try it now. So keep your belly in, keep the muscles strong so that the belly keeps in, and take a deep breath. And when you cannot go anymore, try a little bit more to fill your lungs. You will find that it's a little bit difficult to breathe like that, right? Did you? Now, why that is so is because, one, you're not using a diaphragm a lot. And two, you are going to open up areas in the base of your lung that you have never used before. All right? So let's do about 5 of these breaths. So I want you to keep the belly in, keep the muscles contracted, so you're controlling that area. And now you take a deep breath. And when you think you can't go anymore, try one more time to bring in more, and then let it go. And let's do about 5 of these. Again, keep the belly muscle in. So that's 2, now 3. Another 1. Right. You might feel a bit exhausted because you're doing an exercise that you're not accustomed to. But I want you to practice this every day. At least 10 breaths in the morning when you get up and 10 in the night before you go to sleep. What you're doing is actually using a technique where you're activating the vagus nerve. You're actually, with the breath, the whole business of death also relates back to lack of oxygen. We all can exist for maybe a few weeks without food. We can go maybe a day or 2 without water. But in a few minutes without oxygen, we will all faint, go unconscious, and die as we go along, right? So what you want to do is to start getting the base of your lungs working. And at the same time, enhancing the amount of oxygen into your system. And this technique will get you there. So it's essentially to sit, the back straight, pulling the belly muscles as much as you can. I know some of us will have difficulty, but just work with it. You will get good at it with time. Pulling the belly muscles, you're holding those muscles tight there, and you're going to control those muscles to the extent that they're not going to move at all. And then you're breathing. So nothing is going to happen here. And you're going to fill your lungs. You will find it difficult because you're not accustomed to bring in so much oxygen into your body. That has anti-aging effects. It has effects on the spike proteins. It has effects on your vagus nerve. It has effects on your gut flora. And it will give you a longer life, seriously, at one breathing technique. So far, you've learned how to take a deep breath. Now, if you know which side of your nostril, again, all of this will have an effect on all of these things that we are talking, including the spike protein as well. So there are techniques you could use. You don't necessarily have to use only medicines or so. So if you were to just decide which nostril, if you know it already, that you use during the day. You see, yoga taught us alternate nose breathing exercise. But that yoga came from a watered-down situation where the teachers taught people to remain where they are, not to improve. We have demonstrated this time and time again. During the day, one side of your nostril will bring in more chi, more energy, more prana, all right, than the other side. The other side will bring less. And it switches when the sun goes down. So for me, during the day, it's the left nostril, and in nighttime, it's the right nostril. Switches. But the people who practice yoga and who teach yoga, they have a different story. Because they are programmed to think that anulom viloma, as they call it, alternate nose breathing, it gets you nowhere actually. You can practice this for 30 minutes and you realize your health doesn't change at all. But if you know which nostril to breathe in, so if you come to the practice, let one of the doctors test you to tell you which one during the day and which in the night. You switch. So the technique with this breath, you can combine this same exercise where you do this, and then you breathe, and then you hum. And you're combining three things there. And that's a very powerful technique to improve your life, heal diseases in your body. In fact, the humming sound generates powerful healing energies that will influence every cell in your body. Just as this here is for function, the sound which generates dark energies. Right? And dark energy is for regeneration, rejuvenation. So I've just taught you an exercise that you can use and combine three things together. If you don't know which side of your nostril, then breathe with both, and then do the breathing with this. The best way to do this is like, well, I'll do it here. For me, this is the best way if you can do this. So you sit like this, and you bring this in, and then you hum. And that's the exercise. But if you can't, then do it on a chair, but keep the back straight. So, yes?
If you breathe in through one nostril during the day, is that the correct nostril?
Well, remember, when we are breathing, we're breathing both nostrils, right? But if you're doing the exercise to energize your body, to enhance the flow of chi or energy into your body, then that nostril will give you a lot more.
Okay, but not necessarily the one that you're breathing in more.
No. People will tell you, well, it alternates from left to right and so on. What happens during that time depends on your frame of mind, your mood. Like for instance, okay, let's say for me, if my left nostril is during the day, I'm in a bad mood or I'm feeling down, you'll find that will get clogged up. That's what happens, because the state of your mind will then take the side that is important for you, and it gets less. But if you even try your best to work on that side, gradually you'll have more energy, more chi or prana into your body, and it will help to solve the problem. All right, well, we'll take a break. So over the years, I've taught a number of exercises that are very important for your growth and your spiritual aspect of yourself, to tune into that part of you. And one thing that I was always concerned about is to find things that are simple and things that work. So we did a lot of years of testing with these things and also look at it in our own bodies, and so tested people with it and before and after. And we came up with 3 simple exercises that I share with everybody. And even though they are very simple, they're very effective. So the first exercise really is to get your sacral bone out. Because what has happened with all the programming in us, the programming was designed to take your sacral bone and turn it inward. And when it's in that position, very little energies flow up the spine. So I've always said that the sacral bone is called the sacrum because it is the most important bone in the body. It is the most sacred bone in the body. What does it do? It generates the divine energy from yourself within your body. But in a vast majority of patients or people, that bone is tilted inwards. And when it's in that position, it is basically locked. And if it's locked, very little energy flows up the spine. So let's say you want to be a genius in your life. You want to contribute significantly to the planet. Then that energy should be flowing up and rising up. What it does is what they've created the Christmas story on. So the esoteric side of it is I'm going to give you. And it is the Christmas story that's watered down. So when the energy is flowing up the spine, the sacral bone has to be out this way. So if you sit and you tuck in there, you would notice also that you cannot breathe from your diaphragm, which is interesting. But if your sacral bone is out, you can easily breathe from your diaphragm and fill your lungs. So that sacral bone, as I said, is the most sacred bone. So what it does, it generates an energy all by itself when it's tilted backwards. All right? And that energy moves up the spine, and it goes through every single chakra above the base chakra. Okay? And as it rises up, goes up and up, it goes through all the chakras and has an influence in healing and uplifting the frequency of all the chakras. But let us assume very little is going up because the bone is tilted inwards and it's stuck and there's very little energy moving. And that's where the majority of the population in this world is at. Because of all the programming, that is what has happened. Have you ever seen Usain Bolt walk? He walks. The bone is out naturally. He didn't have to do anything for the bone to be out. Observe him. No, he's not running anymore. The fastest guy around the place. Nobody could beat him in his time. Right? And he was easily, even in 100 meters, to get into the flow or into the zone. You ever seen Brian Lara bat? When he is in the zone, nobody can out him. Nobody can get him out. Because he's in that zone, and he will take your best ball and dismiss it to the boundary. When the runners go into that zone too, they could run forever. Because the amount of energy is rising up is huge. Now that energy, as it goes up, it goes to every chakra. And as it moves up, it draws from the cosmos, the divine energies of the cosmos, into you. And that only happens when this energy rises up. If none is going up, you could do what you want. You could pray how much you want. You could go down on your knees as much as you want and beg. Nothing is going to happen in your life. It is only what your mind could generate that will happen. So that energy rises up, and it reaches into a cave inside the brain. That cave is called the third ventricle. So when you get home, Google the third ventricle. You have 4 ventricles, one on this side, one on the other side, called left and right, and then the third ventricle in the middle, and then the 4th ventricle. So you have 4 ventricles. But the third ventricle is what is called in the sacred literature as the cave of God. In one literature, it's called the cave of Brahma, God. So this energy rises up, and as it rises up, it brings the divine energy from the cosmos in there. And both the divine in man meets the divine from above. So the meeting place, and alchemy takes place, transformation in your life. That's what it's about. Okay? But very few human beings have this sacral bone out. It's all tucked in, so very little gets out. So we have been reduced to living in the 5% zone of energies. So here's an exercise that helps you with time to bring that bone out. And it is this exercise, where you stand and you create a stretch. If you have difficulty keeping that stretch, and you do this, and you push up. And it's easy that way. And you go up on your toes, up and down. And you practice this regularly every day. And as you do that, gradually, it will take some months, because remember, this is stuck. So don't expect miracles within a week. It will gradually come out. And when it comes out, you will have so much more energy, because now the sacral bone is active. The sacral bone is the only bone that I have found in my own research has quartz in it. All the other bones have very little quartz. So there's a bit of quartz, and quartz generates energy, right? Moves up. But most people in life, whatever moves up and it gets to the sex center, it drives that. And you get the urge to merge, as they call it. You like that, right? And when that happens now, you lose most of the energy. So if you really want to be an individual, to get where you want to go, you have to allow a certain amount of energy going up to the brain. Otherwise, you're going to be stupid all your life. Right? So yeah, that's why most of the yogis and the wise ones in every sphere in the world taught man to control the sex energies. Right? So that's the cave of God, so the meeting place. And that's the story of, you know what happens, I'll tell you. In that cave, at the upper part and to the back, you have the pineal gland. It's called the pineal because it looks like a pine cone. Or we rename it the pine cone. So when this energy moves up and that comes down, what happens to the pine cone? It lights up. The energy is changed. Pineal gland is more active. And then when the pine cone lines up, all the gifts available to mankind is right under the tree. That's the Christmas story. That's where it came from. Harry Ramnarine didn't create it. That's what it was. But this is lost its meaning. So for us, if we want to have all the gifts of life, we have to get these energies moving up. So that exercise, let's get up and see if you could try it out for a short while quickly. So if you have difficulty keeping the stretch, because I don't want you doing this. I don't want you doing that. Keep the stretch, or if you have difficulty, bring your hands together and push up and keep that stretch, and now go up on your toes. Right? And gradually, this will have an effect on the sacral bone to bring it slowly, slowly out. It might take your time. Right? That's right. Right? This will also help all your muscles in your legs as well, the calf muscles and so on. So that simple exercise will help the bone. So work out with it until you get to the point where when you sit, you are breathing from your diaphragm too. Now, there's a second exercise. This lady here, face the crowd, is asking me how often. I only give the technique and it's up to you. Right. When you go into the pot, how much food you take out is how much you want or need, right? So you practice what you feel you want to practice. Right. So now the second exercise is to get your diaphragm working, because when you are a baby, you're breathing right from your diaphragm. And then we lose that function because the bone starts to go this way and the diaphragm gets stuck at the same time. So we are in big trouble because you're not breathing from your diaphragm anymore. So here's a technique to help you to get the diaphragm to start to work. So if you want to participate, I'll go back a bit. So you cross your legs at your knee. Make sure you're stable. If you don't feel stable, do it against the backdrop of a wall. So you're at a wall, so I don't want you falling down. Right? So you cross and you keep yourself stable. Cross your elbows, your arms at your elbows, which is all the middle and the middle joints. Put your hands up in the air like this and look up a little bit. Now in this position, you're going to force yourself only to use your diaphragm. So take a deep breath and see what is happening to you. So you're crossing at the elbows. Put your head back a little. Right. Don't get unstable. And take a deep breath and see where you're breathing from. You'd feel the belly muscles like here and here. You're feeling it there. Can you get that? You getting it? So if you practice this exercise, you will get back your diaphragm working again. But you see, all of us at this age in our lives, diaphragm is not working much. It's stuck too, because the sacral bone is stuck. So when you practice this, you'll notice that you are forced to breathe with your diaphragm, and it becomes difficult. So that's the second exercise. And the third exercise is, the meaning of it is really what is called Tat Tvam Asi, which is, I am that, and that is me. Meaning, you are the universe, and the universe is you. You are the divine, and the divine is you. So this is this exercise. So you put your hands up in the air like this again. And when you turn your hands towards you, you take a deep breath, and imagining that the whole universe is becoming you as you breathe in. Hold the breath, turn your hands outwards, and then breathe out through your mouth with a sigh. And imagine that you are disappearing in the universe. So you come back to you again. Feel the entire universe is coming into you and becoming you. And then that you are disappearing into the universe. One more time again. Right. Thank you for participating because I feel more energized by your energy. So those are 3 simple exercises. If you practice every day, it will help you along the way. Any question? So it is into you. Imagine the whole universe is becoming you because you are the universe. You're nothing but a manifestation of the entire universe. But we have been dumbed down over the ages and we have become separated. So I will go into something very interesting that you may not have thought about. So what I'm giving you is what came to me over many years, and I'm going to share it with you. Take it in the way you want to take it. So the original human being was a God-man, and a whole lot of beings existed. Most of those beings have entered the field, and they are always back and forth. They were God-men. A number of beings went the other direction, and they started taking control of life and everything on this planet. And those beings still exist up to today. And they exist in another level. Anybody remember this bit of scripture which says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers in higher places? Anybody remember that? Yeah, everybody remember that. It is talking about those beings. And those beings have absolute control of this planet. It is related to something fell from heaven down to earth called Lucifer. But that's a different story. All right? So these beings control this world. Now, those beings are the ones who create everything that is destruction, called destruction, and everything that is related to death. Right? They're the ones who orchestrate that. I can tell you what I know, and I know this, that there is no destruction in the divine, and there's no death in the divine. But when we have wars, what do you have? Destruction and death. When you have a pandemic, you have destruction and death. When you have tsunamis and earthquakes and so on, you know, generally the human beings would say that's an act of God. There's no such a thing. There are beings out there who have absolute control of all the elements. And you have an earthquake, and you have destruction of property and of life. It's related to that side. Can you imagine the divine creating a wind that flows at 100 miles an hour, kilometers an hour and destroying things? That doesn't happen. The breeze is going to be gentle and nice and cool and relaxing to you. That's what the divine is about. That's something you think a little bit more. It's coming from another side. And that side has had absolute control of this planet. And has taken all of us in the wrong direction. So the first stage of development of those beings is to take man away from God. And what they did, they manipulated the genetic code of human beings and created man and woman. Remember, the original person was a God being? It was not male and female. The divine never created male and female. So now, that is the first stage of the development of the distancing of man from the source, God. You have male and female. So now, in the world, everybody's trying to find themselves and trying to balance themselves. It never happens. Two people coming together is always chaos, no matter what you do. We learn to accept each other. We learn to carry each other. But there's still chaos. We're still trying to find ourselves, and it's still chaos, no matter what you do. That's a fact. Because we have been separated from ourselves. We are no longer the divine. Second stage of the development, and what we are talking about, is the man moving away, further away from the divine. So what they did, they created religion. All the religions were created by them. It was not created by man. It is not created by any holy men or the sages or the saints. It's created by them. So that's the second stage where they took man away from God further by putting God out there and you are here. So Harry, when you're in big trouble, go down on your knees and beg God. Remember, you were the divine. You didn't have to ask anything. You didn't have a need for anything. You could have created it yourself. So that's the second stage of what they have achieved. And the third stage started quite a while now. It's called AI. And it's going to take man further away from God. When man will reach a point where there's no divine anymore. Haven't you realized that God is getting more and more to the picture in humanity? Just look and you will see what I'm talking about. Those are the three phases of these beings who have been taking man further away from God. It is time that we all wake up. It is time that we become aware of where we have been walking. Change your life. You are all sitting here as divine beings that have been conned into accepting a totally different reality. It is time that we wake up. 2020 is a remarkable year, bringing us to the place where death was facing us. I remember a friend telling me something in the Bible that says, "O death, where is thy sting?" You know, when I heard that, I asked the first patient who came to my office, and I said, "Can you say that?" He said, "Me? And I will be dead next morning?" It was so funny. So, how is death coming into the picture? I know some of this might be totally new, but I have kept myself quiet on that. But today I reveal that to all of you, so you understand what has been happening to mankind. The time has come where we need to go back home, get back to where we're supposed to. And these beings don't have more power than us. You know. They have created all the fear and everything. When you have fear, you know what happens to you? All your power, all your strength disappears. Your immune system goes down. Everything goes down. And that's what happened during the pandemic. When we looked during the pandemic to see what was the theme of the whole planet, anybody familiar with the Bach remedies? Yeah, the Bach flower essences. The theme at that time in the whole world was rock rose. And you know what rock rose is? Bach described rock rose as terror, fear, and panic. A feeling that you're going to die. That's what rock rose was. And that's what it treats as well. And when you're in that state, your whole immune system literally goes to almost a zero. And anything could kill you at that stage. Even if you didn't get a virus, you know. You could even get a small virus and that would kill you because you're in a bad shape. But I will repeat again that a virus has no brain. You and I have a big brain. And we have enough inside of us to heal ourselves. But you see, as I said to you all, we have been, just understand where your sacrum is, what your diaphragm is doing, and how much really life-enhancing oxygen gets into your body. Then you realize the whole pandemic was based on a simple concept. It was targeting the lungs of the elderly. It was based on that. And they have been talking about the economics in the world. And whatever has happened, we ended up with a virus that generated spike proteins, right? And that spike protein is still within all of us. But there's something more to it. What I discovered during that pandemic is that all of us who carry the pattern of disease, degeneration, and death, all creating spike proteins. Forget pandemic now. The modality, the mechanism of death, or disease, degeneration, and death has always been spike proteins, different types of spike proteins. So for instance, if a person gets a heart attack and drop dead, if a person has a cancer and eventually they die, or somebody gets any infection, whether it's a bacteria and a septicemia and they die, it is all orchestrated finally by inflammatory response, but the back of all of that is a spike protein. It's a protein molecule which is part of the process of these viruses that are generated. So here I would just open your mind to something a little bit interesting. Viruses they are like electrons. You can't see a virus. In Trinidad, we don't have a microscope to see a virus. You need an electron microscope to get a glimpse of a virus, right? It is so small. It is somewhere between matter and non-matter. You get my point, what I'm saying? It is so small. It is somewhere in the middle of matter and non-matter. That is pure energy and matter. So a virus doesn't have to be bad only. In fact, if all of you sitting here could lift the consciousness, lift the vibrational levels of yourself, do you know what will happen? You will create viruses in your body, which is nothing but genetic material. It will be generated in your body and gets into your cells and changes your genetics in such a way that now you have a higher consciousness at the physical level too. Everybody get that? It's a bit too much to say it again. So, okay. So all of you sitting here, you're listening to stuff. Go on YouTube, you're listening to stuff. It's uplifting you. And for some reason, it's starting to change your way of thinking a little bit into a better zone, a better level. But that is happening at one level. So what happens to the physical body? Then you need something within the script of the physical body to change the genetics to keep in pace with and in sync with the consciousness that you are in now. So suppose all of you would have changed your consciousness level. Let's put it with a number. Suppose we're all operating at 5. And suppose we suddenly become an 8 by the way we're thinking now. Your body has to follow. So what will happen is your body will generate good viruses, which is nothing but good genetic material. Right? The DNA will create that. And these viruses will then get into your cells. And these are healthy viruses, good viruses. And they will get into your genetics and change your genes. So now you're in sync with 8. You understand it now? That is happening all the time. So you have good viruses. In an article I wrote, I think I wrote an article about the pandemic. It's somewhere in YouTube you could find it, on the WordPress. And I spoke about that then, if you had seen the article. That good viruses are generated to shift your body genetically into a higher vibration. So now you're functioning at a higher vibration, including your body, not just your thoughts. It has to happen at a physical level too. Remember I said your physical body is not less than or greater than your spiritual self. If your physical body dies, your soul dies too, you know. This word soul I don't like to use because it is you who is nothing but divine manifesting in a form. The form has 3 parts: matter, energy, information. So you have a material body, an energy system, and the energy system is fascinating. Do you know that you have electricity running through your nerves as long as you're alive all the time? Long before they discovered electricity out there, your nerves carrying electricity, right? It's always there. How many of you are familiar that your body, every cell produces light? How many are familiar with that? Light. It generates light. Put your hands up. Let me see how many people. It's called biophotons. Fritz Albert Popp, a German biophysicist, came across that, started talking about it. There were a few people before him, but he crystallized the whole concept of biophotons. And then they started creating machines generating biophotons, similar to your body. In fact, it took me a number of years to take a photograph of photons generated from an instrument. It's exactly like the sun. If you take a picture of the sun, and if you want to see it, I have it on my phone. In fact, I do plan in the near future to have one of these companies to create that into things that you could get. Probably purchase or something and get some more money. But I like to give away too, so you might be lucky. So your body produces energy called photons all the time. One day I asked a biochemist. He was literally knocking me for what I do because he was introduced to me. And I told him, I'm listening to this professor of biochemistry from UE. And I listened. After about 10 or 15 minutes of listening to him, then I asked him if he knew about biophotons. He didn't answer. So I said, Professor, how in your body all these chemical reactions, thousands of them, could be controlled? And you know what he told me? He told me the slowest method, called the biochemistry. He said the biochemistry will control all these chemical reactions in the body. If we have to depend on biochemistry to control all these reactions, thousands of them in your body, remember you have over 60 trillion cells, and you have chemical processes occurring in every cell. How are they controlled? He said the biochemistry. And when I said, well, let's go back to the biophoton, you know what he did? He turned and walked away. You don't want to listen to science. And since the early 1980s, Fritz Albert Popp has been talking about biophotons. You know, I don't know of any medical school to date on the planet teaching students about biophotons. Not a single, not even UE is teaching medical students about biophotons. And that is the fastest method of communication. The slowest is the chemistry, the biochemistry. I'll give you an example. Your thyroid gland produces thyroid hormones. It has to get into the bloodstream, and it has to go to all the organs and have an effect. That's a slow process. The next process, which is faster, is the electrical process, the nerve system. So your brain could be thinking things and it's sending information through your vagus nerve. And you want to move your finger, it can move right away. It goes at the speed of electricity going through your body and causing the muscles to contract. So the slowest is biochemistry, the chemistry. Faster than that is electricity. All right? And the fastest is the speed of light. So if you bounce your toe, every cell in your body knows because it travels at the speed of light. Photons. So the photons there will inform the whole body, hey, I'm in big trouble. All right? Help me. So cells start to get down into that area to heal. And the professor walked away from science. And that's how these guys think. Can you imagine that? And he thinks that the body is held together in good homeostasis by the biochemistry. If we have to depend on the biochemistry, we would fall apart even before we reach 1 year old. Fall apart. And he's a professor in biochemistry at UE. Anyway, so viruses can be good, and they could recreate a body that is functioning at a higher level in sync with your consciousness. So every time you move up a ladder, that is what is happening. But now we also have viruses. I won't go into how we get them. That's not my business, right? But we have viruses that generate spike protein. Then I started to think about this. I created the algorithm for the COVID-19. Then I realized at that point, it was only targeting the lungs of old people because I matched it up with about 1,700 medicines that I know, that I studied in the early years of my life. That vibrational medicine, that is. That's after I left the hospital. And the 1st of March, 2020, 1st of March, after 4 months of seeing things that were different, that is a new virus, 1st of March, I went through 1,700 medicines to see which is the closest to that algorithm that we created for the COVID-19. And when we did that, it came up to a remedy which is a combination of influenzinum and bacillinum. And let's leave it at that because all of you who are patients knew of that remedy. Right? Yes? I need to speak up. Oh. Maybe I have to go back because if I shout and then it will get to... All right. The mic not working? It's what? The light is still on. Can you hear me now? Because I'm shouting. All right, I'll try to be a bit louder. Okay, so you have now a virus that we now came face to face with, which ran for a number of years. And that virus is related to spike protein because in the virus you have these spikes that will attach to various cells and get into the cells and then create havoc. So that's the spike protein. Now, what we found interestingly during that time, that this program of disease, degeneration, and death is related to spike proteins. I will tell you the story now. So when we went through that process, we were able to use that remedy for patients, and it worked 100%. in all the patients that we treated. And what happened, when we got the Delta variant, everything changed. And the Delta variant was a totally different thing altogether. Now, here's what I will share with you what happened. So it took me 2 weeks to figure out the new algorithm for the Delta variants that we were treating. In fact, at that time, I had 3 people who had the Delta, and they were really very sick. 2 of them were 2 brothers of mine, and we thought we would have lost one of them because he was on continuous oxygen 24 hours a day, and we couldn't get him off the oxygen. And we had 2 other patients with the Delta to deal with. So having worked with them, we've discovered the algorithm for the Delta, and then we were able to treat them, and they're all still alive today. Interestingly, I decided to look into my computer to see if I had created this before, when I started to look at spike protein. And when I created the algorithm for the spike protein that was now what we're dealing with, guess what we found? That it was the same as the Delta variant. Got that, Everett? What it told us, therefore, is that the Delta variant created the worst spike protein, that created the most inflammation, and created the most deaths in the country. So now I started to look at that situation with the spike protein and discovered it has a relationship with disease, degeneration, and death. So it led me to think, let us go back to what we started earlier on, that the spike protein is what we generate in our bodies that generates death in our bodies and our lives. So I saw a correlation. So now we have a better handle of dealing with disease, degeneration, and death. You follow me? Am I confusing? What I'm saying is that when we had the Delta variant, we created an algorithm, and it was stored in my computer. When we started looking at the spike protein, we battled with that for a while and eventually created an algorithm. An algorithm is defined as a mathematical construct to create a specific effect or outcome. Everybody happy with that? A simple definition. So we created the algorithm for the patients at that time with all the spike proteins and all the issues, all the inflammatory response. And lo and behold, we discovered that that spike protein was the same, exactly the same as the Delta variant. So that's the reason we found that it concluded that that's why we had the most deaths in Trinidad and Tobago when we had the Delta variant, because it was producing the maximum amount of spike protein. So let's have a short discussion on spike protein now. So when you create spike protein, let's start with your gut flora. Let's not talk about the virus and the pandemic for the moment. Let's separate that. Our bodies, actually, when you're born, go and take a picture of yourself when you were in your teens, or maybe in your 20s or early 30s, and look at yourself and compare yourself to today. You would see a big difference in then and now, right? You have aged, the body has deteriorated to some extent. You cannot do the things that you used to do at that time. Even your balance is not as great as it used to be. I see babies, young boys or children walking on a wall, and the mother is screaming, you're going to fall down. But if the mother is trying to walk on the wall, she will be out of balance. So she knows that they could fall, but they wouldn't fall down, right? Because they have really good balance. And if you want to know how well you're aging, check your balance. And you can help yourself by standing like this with your eyes open, and then standing with it with your eyes closed. And if you could do that, you have good balance. Get up and try that. Try it out. Don't embarrass yourself. So 1 foot, eyes open, and then close your eyes and see if you could still stay standing, because you're losing the visual impact. So if you have difficulties, if you're doing it, great. You're in good balance. But if you have difficulty, practice this exercise every day. Right? Stand up, keep your eyes open and then close your eyes and see if you can still stand without tripping over. And some of us can do it and some of us can't, all right? So all you need to do, hey, get up. All right, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. No, it's okay, I'm just joking. So practice this every day. Seriously, practice it next to a wall or next to a chair that you could hold on just in case. I don't want you falling down. I don't want you breaking a bone, right? So it's a simple exercise. You stand up, eyes open. You're okay because your eyes are giving you feedback. And the feedback is to keep yourself standing. And then close your eyes and see how much you could do. Right? Yeah. Well, all of these bring all the energies in the right place. Because all the exercises I'm teaching you is going to help you to deal with all the things that we are talking about. In fact, you can improve your whole health. You can anti-age as well with all these techniques, simple techniques that we are throwing out for you to practice. You just have to remember them and practice every day. See, I spend about 20 minutes every single morning working on my health, physical body. So here's a beautiful exercise, all of you. So I want you to close your eyes. Please don't keep your eyes open watching me now. Close your eyes and get a feel of your whole body as a one whole body, not just cells and organs. So keep your eyes closed and just get a feel of yourself. Connect with yourself, therefore. And now what I want you to do is focus yourself on your heart chakra, center of your chest, and I want you to get a feeling of an energy flowing out from the heart called love. And send that to all the cells in your body. Just allow that to flow to every cell in your body. And if there's a part in you that hurts, or if there's a part of you that is not healthy, send into that zone as well. And just allow that energy to continue flowing. And this simple exercise has a tremendous impact on your health. And any part you want to heal, if you allow love to flow into it, it will heal. But that's the most powerful energies of the source, from the source itself. All right, you could open your eyes. So the thing is, all these simple techniques, they work. We have tested these. We have patients sit down. They have a reading of 4 or 3 out of 10. And we allow them to do this exercise, and we test them again. They come up to sometimes 8 and 9 out of 10. It's very effective, but you have to participate. You have to be in tune with what you're doing. And you can also help people from a distance, because love, the quality of love is, it goes through space and time very rapidly. So that if you think of someone who is not well, or they're having problems, you could do the same thing. You could either sit or stand up, and you can put your hands out like this now and direct that love into that person. Now, the core of you don't need love. I said this earlier this morning. But the body needs love. Your space around you needs love. Your plants need love. People around you need love. So that is what we are about. So I started earlier on by saying to you, start doing things to get love moving from yourself. And if you do that, you could heal your body by just doing that, because as I said earlier on, where love is blocked in your bodies, disease will appear. And I will advise you, and maybe warn you as well, there is only one type of love in the universe. There are not 2 or 3 or 12 types of love. I saw an article talking about 12 types of love. Pure crap. Then they talk about 3 different types of love. There is only one love. The love that you love everybody in the same way. You see, people mix up. When Charles met his wife, Sandra, they call that love. That has nothing to do with love. Absolutely nothing to do with love. They're 2 different human beings. What has happened there, and what has happened to all of us, is called magnetic attraction. Nothing to do with love. Well, our bodies are magnetic beings as well. We are electromagnetic beings. And so you see someone, this is you, and you see someone that you're magnetically attracted to, and that's what happens. Now you have to start to love two different people. You have to love that person, both of you loving each other. That starts. But here's the problem in the world, and it happens in some countries maybe more than 1,000 times every day, where two people magnetically attracted to each other like this. So somebody appears over there, and this one feels more magnetically attracted to that than this. If you have two magnets of a certain quality and you bring them together like this, not collapse them yet, and another one comes a stronger magnet, this one is going to go there. And that happens maybe at least 1,000 times in America every single day. And some of them end up in the divorce courts and so on having a divorce. That is what it is. So when we come together and magnetically attracted to each other, now we have a totally different human being, you know. And that's where it would lead me to say to you all that, and I said a bit of it this morning, that a human being, all of us, are a product of three things. One is all the genetics, and we are loaded with that. So we are all a product of all our ancestors. Next, we are a product of the environment. And what is the environment? It's the house you grew up in. You can have 6 houses on the same street. Each one has a different way of life. And so those in this house will be slightly different from those in this house. And then we go to this society, the larger family, so to speak. And that's a different type of energy. And then we are controlled by religion. Religion has created a different, because, you know, seriously, you may disagree with this, but you know, a Muslim can't love a Catholic, and a Catholic can't love a Hindu, and a Hindu can't. That's the problem in the world. You might say, I disagree with you, Harry, but the problem here is that there are people in religion who are totally not in religion, really. It is a social activity for them because they are not as the masses in the religion. But the masses in the religion, they're all the same. You could get some of those fanatics in any religion to go into another person's religious place of worship. That wouldn't happen. I mean, I could go in the Catholic Church, I could go in a temple, I could go in a mosque. I have no problem with that. And I'm sure most of you could do that. But there are guys who would say, me? I can only go here, because that's what I believe. You understand what I'm saying? No, I'm not talking about a good and a bad here. I'm just stating a fact that religion programs us to think and be a certain way. So that contributes. So we are a product of that. And then we look at the larger society. And we look at, in the last few years, even WHO as well creates a pattern of how we're going to live. And now we have signed into that too in this country. So we have a new further pandemic. They will just march in and say, okay, you and you and you, you all have to, and all of us have to follow these rules. And that's where we are at. I'm not saying whether it's good or bad, that's where we are at. So we are a product of those two things. Plus now you have a mind. M-I-N-D. And if you have a mind, do you know what your mind is all about? I will start by saying your mind, you don't have bad mind. That is not true. And you don't have mental illnesses either. That's just a term they use. Because everybody who goes and who listens to a psychiatrist who says we have mental illness, you know what they say eventually? It's a chemical imbalance in your brain. Is that what they say? So does that exist at the mind level? No. It exists at the physical level. So all these mental illnesses are physical illnesses. In fact, all illnesses are physical illnesses. It's a biochemical change. So they give you drugs to alter the biochemical change. So there's no such a thing as mental illness. But I understand that. There's a jargon, there's a way, a term they use. But there's no such a thing as mental illness. Now, I'm not denying what people have in psychiatry, psychiatric condition. I'm saying it is all physical. That's all I'm saying. So you have those components. So you have a mind. And the only function of your mind as you're sitting here is to manifest or create the life that you want. It's a God-given tool. It's a quantum tool that we all have. The minute you could create something in your mind, you create the substance of it. which is the information of it. And I can guarantee you, the minute that happens, it enters the quantum field. So it's there and it's here. And if you can move towards it, participate, you will be able to create whatever you want. Don't do like the guy who said, I want to be a millionaire. He bought a nice hammock and lied on the hammock and just created in himself millions of dollars flowing into his life. It ain't going to happen. You have to participate. That's what the second part of what the Master Jesus said. Whatsoever you desire, what you create in your mind, believe that you will have it. That belief that you will have it is not just believing it will happen. You have to participate. You have to go through the process. And then it will happen. Then the universe will make everything happen for you. And if all of you go and live your life like that, you could create anything you want, including good health. Because that's what the mind is about. Now, if the mind is at a lower frequency, whatever could go wrong will go wrong. Everybody get that? If your mind is at a higher frequency, whatever could go wrong will go right. So it is all about the frequency of your mind, what frequency it is operating. So let me give you an example. So a person may have an illness, and they go to the doctor, the examiner said, we don't think you have anything serious. So the person is okay. And that person is healthy, full of energy. But then some tests reveal that there's probably a marker of cancer that is high. So the person gets a call and says, come into the office. Something we found here is not looking right. So now what happens to her mind? She was okay, high frequency. Now she got the information, now the mind slips here. And now she goes to the doctors and says, but you know what? We have to do some more testing because this shows that you may have a cancer in this particular zone in your body. So the mind energy frequency goes lower. And then a few weeks later, after a biopsy or whatever, or more testing, you have cancer. Now, it's almost rock bottom. And now she cannot help herself. And whatever they tell her to do, she will do. But if the frequency of the mind remains high, you will find everything that will help you to cure yourself, including help from the doctors too. You all got that? And that's what happens to us on a daily basis. We get information, and it either lifts us or it takes us down. And when it takes us down, we cannot help ourselves anymore. So please, start living a life and keep the frequency of your mind at the highest level that you can. If you wake up in the morning and you're feeling like everything looking like it's gray clouds, not only outside but inside of you too, just try to bring the sun back into your life. Make a change in this before you get out into the world. You can do it. I'm sure myself, there's not every morning I get up, I feel top of the world. But I will not get out unless and get to do my work or whatever unless I am in a better place. And I could do it, and you can do it too. To change it, you could just go outside and look at the sun with your eyes closed and feel the energies of the sun getting into your body. It will change you. I'm not asking you to leave your eyes open. I mean, I did that, but you have to be careful. You have to know what you're doing. So I would suggest start with your eyes closed and let this red light, when you hit your eyelids, you will see red. That red light is going to energize you. So that's that. So that's the three components. So you see, your mind now is the one which can heal the genetics and you can heal all the environmental issues. But the problem with all of us is we have already been programmed to think a certain way. And we don't think for ourselves. If you start thinking for yourself, nobody likes you, Nobody wants to be around you. Right? I faced that when I was growing up. Start to think for yourself, you become what is called rebellious. So the definition of anybody who is a rebel, different from a revolutionary thinking person. A rebel is a good person. They're just thinking for themselves. They listen to everybody, but they think for themselves. I listen to everybody all the time. But when I generate thoughts, I'm doing it by taking all the information. Because the art of listening, how many of you could listen really? Show up your hands. Could listen. Let me define it for you. Then some of you might put down your hands. If you're listening you cannot agree or disagree. Your mind is still. That is what listening is. So if you're agreeing with me, it means you are thinking and comparing notes. If you're disagreeing with me, you're taking whatever you already know and comparing and disagreeing. So when you're in that state, you're not listening. If you learn the art of listening, the mind's still. Just listen. And if you could learn to listen, then you could learn a lot. And you will gain a lot. So go and practice that. If you want to start the art of listening, it will take you some years. It took me many years. So you can listen, everybody could listen to the fan of the air conditioner right now. So take a sound and sit down. Don't stress yourself. Just do 2 or 3 minutes, right? And then you could increase it with time. So there's a technique you can do to learn the art of listening. If you learn the art of listening, then you will get to a point where you could stop and you have no thoughts. But if you say that you have the art of listening and you stop right and close your eyes, you will be surprised what is happening in your mind. It's going and coming back and you don't even know. And I'm sure most of us here would have that problem. But it took me many, many years of practice where I was listening to a particular sound and I kept listening until eventually, after 17 years, so I can tell you, I could stand like this here right now and it could be noise outside there. I'll open my eyes. No thoughts at all. Absolutely none. When you can get to that stage, you can manifest anything you want. Because now you have control of the mind. The inner you has control of the mind. And now whatever the mind creates can materialize itself. Because if you're not in that place, if you create something, the other things around you will say, no, that is impossible. What the hell are you trying? That ain't gonna work. People around you, when you go and share that information, say, you won't be able to achieve that, That's impossible. And then everything falls through. But if you have control of your mind, then you will quietly create anything that you want. And that's what I did in my own lifetime. Everything that I needed, I don't ask anybody for anything. Anything I ask anybody for, I pay them for. But at the end of the day, in my life, everything that I have achieved, I created in my mind, enters the field, and I participate. And that's how I live my life. When I was much younger, I told my parents, I have 0, and I don't need anything. I never took anything. Whatever I took from my parents, I borrowed and I paid back. Seriously. And up to today, I did not take anything. Now, I'm not telling you you have to do that, but that was my life. And everything that I have today, I created myself. I participated in the whole process. And everybody could achieve that. So why people are still asking for reparation? Why we just don't sit down and understand that we are part of this universe and that we can actually create everything that we want. We can make anything happen. I'll give you a story about India. And I'm not just talking about India because I feel it. I've only been once and I don't know if I want to go back. It might happen, but it took me a long time before I decided to go. So India decided they don't want reparation for whatever has happened to them with the British and so on. You know what they did? They're so smart, and I'm not saying intelligent. Smart is a different word. They created spiritual tourism, and they brought millions into India under the banner of Sai Baba. I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. I'm just telling you facts. Then when he left the scene, on leaving the scene, they created IPL. And IPL is Indian Premier League. So they got the most revered people in India who are the movie stars and the cricketers, top cricketers at the time, like Tendulkar and so on. And they today rule ICC. Because they put in more money into international cricket, company or whatever, than anybody else, than the Australians and the English. And up to today, that is still raking in millions, right? So Sai Baba gone. So they needed a man to replace him. And what they did, They needed a man who has a sense of humor, who is intelligent, who could appeal to the young people, and Sadhguru fit that pattern. So they created a scenario around Sadhguru, and he's now bringing in millions too. I am not talking about right and wrong here. I'm just showing you how smart these guys are. And they don't need reparation, right? And they're still bringing in millions, and they're smart enough. But in Trinidad here, we could have done the same. We could create things over here. We could create a site in this place that becomes a tourist attraction that everybody wants to come. We can develop all the natural resources that we have in this small island. But no, we cannot become a first world nation in Trinidad and Tobago at all. We can't, unless government decide that everybody must contribute to the country. Today, I will say it because it's recorded, about 70% of the people in this country contributes zero to the country. Anybody disagree? Show me your hand. Nobody wants to show me. Seriously, this country is run like that, and it's aided by the leaders. So 70% of the people are only takers. I don't want anything from government. I don't want anything from anybody. And anybody who's sitting here who is thinking like that will create the life that you want. And you can achieve anything you want to achieve. And you could do it in an honest way. Hard work. Hard work is never hard work for me because I enjoy every moment of it. I'm serious. Doesn't matter. So our spike protein is actually a protein that our bodies can generate, and it has always been generating. And that is what creates disease, eventually degeneration and death. How that happens is this. Remember, there is a script that we all have, whether it is a script of what I consider to be chronic I should take it back. Cardiovascular disease, cancers, infections. All of these are scripts. It's all written in all of us. You know, if we really look at it, we all have one of those scripts on how we're going to die. Right? Now, can we remove it? The answer is yes. It is all orchestrated by spike protein. What happens initially is all the consciousness, all the thinking, downloads via the vagus nerve into your gut flora. So from the higher levels of the microbiome, it goes down into the gut flora. The gut flora is now changing, and that's the final pathway where the friendly bacteria, which would always be working for you, feeding you, creating all kinds of goodies inside your bowels. In fact, when people are fasting, the microbiome is turning things around all the time, you know, for you. They're generating what you need to keep you alive. They will create anything. They create proteins for you. But you see, if you think that you're not eating, that you're going to starve, then your thoughts will then generate the same thoughts. So then you'll start to feel hungry and you have to go and eat. But you could go as long as you want to go. And you can be recycling everything in your body through what is called autophagy. So all those are mechanisms in your body that can work for you. So down at this level, when the bacteria starts to go in a bad way, creating all these kind of like fungus and bacteria and different bad ones, they are going to generate toxins, which those toxins will get out of the body into the bloodstream and go into different areas, and those toxins will generate spike proteins and create diseases of different types based on the tendency that we all carry in ourselves. So if it is cardiovascular that we are carrying at some level, here's what is going to happen. They will create cardiovascular disease, or they will create cancer, or they will create another disease. And it's, to my mind, I don't have all the proof, but so far, what I'm thinking of is that it is spike proteins of different types. Basically, it's one spike, but when they get to the site, they will create a disease that you have the tendency for. You all got that? So all of it comes from the gut flora. Toxins of a specific type. It will move and get to the breast if that is where the pattern is. And it will then start to generate cells in that area that will then become. And where does the cells, cancer cells, come from? Not from your breast cells, you know. The colon cancer doesn't come from your colon cells. I've always said that your body has been around for millions of years. And there are only a few things that affects your body. Cancer and all these abnormal patterns, they come from the microbiome in the zone. So in your breast, you have lymph, and in your lymph, you have microbiome. So the toxins will then interact with these microbiome in the breast and create cancer cells. And then when they do the pathology, they will say you have breast cancer. Why? Because it came from your breast. So cancer comes from the microbiome by way of the toxins, all right, that gets into there. And those toxins are mediated through, again, these spike proteins. And they will get in there, link up to these microbiome, and transform them into the cells that would manifest eventually. Whether it's going to be a bacteria and you get septicemia, or some septic condition that overpowers you, or that you get a heart attack and cells die in your heart. Whatever the susceptibility, it will create in that zone. So what eventually we found is a way in which we can actually treat these conditions. And what you have in your bottle there is simply a product that is quite interesting, because Dr. Nilash was doing his own research and he discovered, by way of using intravenous laser, and he was using blue light and then found some remarkable changes, but he was looking at it from the inflammatory point of view, but the whole patient still, and started getting good results with a whole lot of diseases with the blue light laser intravenously, right? When I started looking at how we should deal with the spike proteins, I found it is related to a yellow flower, calendula, marigold, right? And the marigold is basically, if you take anything in nature, is left spin. So you have 3 spins in nature. You have right spin, left spin, and 0 spin, right? Everybody got that? Now, right spin, all medical drugs are right spin. We have tested as many as we have had the opportunity to do. All medical drugs are right spin. What are right spin? They are fighters. I'm just going over this again, so some of you might be new. They are fighters, because when you have pain, what do you get? A painkiller, right? When you have inflammation, you get an anti-inflammatory. When you have a bacteria, you get an antibiotic. Right spin medicines work. Nobody should be against that. In fact, we are not against right spin medicine. They work, and they work quickly, because they are fighters. But they all have some side effects that we have to contend with at the end of the day. Left spin medicines work slowly. They come from the sun. So all the plant material that we have on this planet, as food and as herbs and all the foliage that we have all around, they all have medicinal properties, but it takes time. It doesn't go fast. They are left spin, right? All of them. What we have done is take these products and create an algorithm that is 0 spin. So let me give you an idea. When we discovered in the COVID times, when the patient came into us in November, December, January, February, for 4 months we were seeing patients had a specific virus that we didn't have a cure for. And nobody knew it was COVID then. What we did is we took an algorithm that is right spin. Listen carefully, right spin. And when we used an algorithm as right spin and created the algorithm for those patients, we were able to create the remedy to deal with the virus. And it was right spin, so it worked like a vaccine, and it also worked to interact with the virus in the human body and get rid of it. How it works, I'll tell you. How many of you have a noise-canceling headphone? Some of you might have, right? It works like this. So if you have a spike of noise like this, if you give the mirror image of it, it cancels, right? That's what you see in an oscilloscope. So you give the same as or similar, just by reversing the pattern a bit, giving the mirror image. So homeopathic medicine works like that. And homeopathic medicine is right spin too, just like drugs. But it is safer simply because it is vibrational and has less toxic physical side effects. There's a difference. So homeopathic medicine is right spin, and all medical drugs are right spin. So homeopathic medicines are fighters too. So that if you could find the right medicine, they will neutralize and cancel. And that's how they work. So what we did is, in order to work quickly, we need a right spin medicine. So we took an algorithm that was right spin and created the remedy for this COVID-19. And it worked. It worked for a year plus until the Delta came. Then we had to work on it and create the right spin remedy for the Delta. And that worked as well. So the calendula is what we found, and that is yellow. How many of you know that for macular degeneration, there's a lot of research that if you want to prevent macular degeneration in your eyes, you use lutein. How many are aware of that? And lutein is made from marigold, right? It's an extract of marigold. But what we did is to take the calendula, which I have a tincture of, which has a positive influence in removing, clearing getting rid of the spike protein. We created a zero spin. So what you have in your bottles there is actually a zero spin. What is a zero spin medicine? It's one that works at all levels of yourself. And it has the capacity for right spin and left spin as well. Because if you start with a spinner and it's zero, you could turn it right or left. So the remedy you got in your bottle there is actually a zero spin medicine. In fact, in Ishtara, all the medicines that we have, they're usually, some homeopathics we still use, but not much. But in general, we use mainly zero spin medicine because it works at all three levels of yourself. Right? So that is how we were able to take the calendula, which is yellow. So what Dr. Nalash was doing is taking the blue laser, but we were also using curcumin, which is a yellow pigment. And correct me, Nalash, if I'm missing out anything. So they use curcumin, and together with the blue laser. So the blue laser gets to the point where it may be activating the curcumin stuff, the yellow pigment, to actually work on the spike proteins. Because what I feel at the moment, and what Nalash is already doing, is that we have two approaches to dealing with spike protein. And so for very difficult cases, very severe cases, we might just be continuing doing more blue laser for that condition. But I also was having a discussion with him and saying, to remove disease, degeneration, and death, we may be using the same thing because that is also related to spike protein. So we are in a larger picture. We're not just looking at COVID and the COVID virus. We're looking at anti-aging and looking at longevity as well, and removing chronic diseases, which is all inflammatory and probably related to spike protein, with blue laser. So Nalash is just ordering another diode, which is for a second laser, blue laser. And so we'll be able to more effectively treat most of the chronic patients with that. So we have gained a lot from coming out of the COVID, because now I feel one way or the other, I feel strongly that a lot of these diseases that we are seeing mediated through inflammation is all connected back to spike protein. And then the end result is exactly what the trait you are carrying. If you're carrying a trait of infection is going to kill you, that is eventually how it will happen with spike protein. If it is cancer, that is what is going to happen. So we are working on a method that we can prevent those for those who are interested. Because we're not here, Ishtara is not here for the whole world. It's not here for the whole of Trinidad and Tobago. It's for those people who are interested in this form and this way of therapy. And that's what we are about, because, you're never here for the whole country. Maybe we are dealing with just a 1%. But don't forget that all of you here belong to our 1%. Right? I told one day Mr. Jack Warner, I said, Mr. Warner, we have 100 1%ers in this country. We just need to get the 99% who don't see themselves as a 1%er. And so I am participating in that to get people to understand that they are also a 1%er. And they have power as well. So that's where we are. So just before I close, and before we take some questions, these are two remedies that I've been working on for months. I just want to introduce them, not as a way of marketing, because that's not my portfolio. And I'm never into marketing. People may disagree with me, but marketing is about coercing people to buy. And I'm not into that. If you need it, then you will find it. So But these two remedies are remarkable. I've been working on these for months. On my right hand, I have a male formula, and the left is a female formula. And these remedies are very powerful. They actually enhance the chi in every part of your body. They also work on your female hormones if you're taking the female one. No, I don't expect that the male to take the female one. And the other one is for men. It will enhance their hormones as well. Now, testosterone is not about sex, and female hormone is not about sex. A man is a man because of his testosterone. As we get older, and with all the spike proteins, our testosterone levels tend to go lower and lower and lower, and the body is aging. If you go and look at yourself as a young man, when you were young, what's that? Oh, it's a baby. Shoot, I didn't realize you had a baby here. All right. Okay. So, getting back to what I was saying. So, as a man, when you were young, you had high levels of testosterone, and it influenced your skin. It influenced your muscles in your body, your heart as well. Every part of your body is influenced by that. So what we have succeeded in doing is creating a remedy that people can use all the time, if they choose to. And I hate doing this, but I wanted, because I spent a lot of hours with these two remedies, finally it was created, it was tested thoroughly, because we don't use, I haven't even passed this on to the doctors. So Nilesh might be hearing, he's outside now. I do not take a remedy and give it to the doctor unless I've tested it thoroughly. And sometimes they get to find out about new remedies when we do a seminar, because up to now this has not been told to them. So he's left, so we'll have to talk to him about it. But anyway, and the female one is just exactly the same. So this works in the whole body to maintain health, it has anti-aging effects and all of that stuff. So these are two very powerful medicines that we have just finished with all the testings, and they have wonderful effects. Well, okay, remember when you get to a point where you have a manifestation of disease in terms of pathology, the problem you're faced with now is if you have a large fibroid and it's obstructing, this is going to improve your health definitely. But whether it will then reverse and cause the fibroid to shrink, that's another story. It depends on where the fibroid. We have seen some fibroids over the years, like smaller ones shrink and disappear. I've seen one that's 10 centimeters also shrink as well. But then some people will have so many complaints that they will have to go and sort them out, like bladder issues and so on. So it all depends on where you are. Like, for instance, if you have a tumor somewhere, the chances are that it's good to have surgery, because as long as the tumor is there, it's going to be bothering you. But if you remove it, at least it's exercise from your mind as well. Well, the thing is that I've given you something that could work specifically on the gut flora to keep it healthy. You have two things. One you have is the clove. We have tested that thoroughly, so I'm sharing that with you, so you could use that on a daily basis, a small amount every day. It will take all the gut flora from bad into a better level, right? Change them, not necessarily destroying them, but changing them back to where they're supposed to be. And if you could feed your gut flora soluble fiber on a daily basis, one particular ingredient that we don't see much of, but I have a whole stack for myself in my freezer for years. It is called, trying to remember the name, slippery elm. Anybody know of slippery elm? Right. Slippery elm is an excellent, herbal remedy for your gut flora as well. Slippery elm. It has a lot of soluble fiber, but it has a lot of anti-inflammatory effects, and it may also be having a positive influence on spike protein, because remember, anything that works on the gut flora will help to negate the effect of spike protein. So slippery elm, initially when slippery elm was used, it came from the elm tree, from the bark and so on. That was used as a nutrient, and it was also used in patients who were malnourished and they couldn't digest anything. They gave them slippery elm. They used to call it gruel in those days, and they make it from that and feed people and keep them alive and nourish them. So slippery elm is still a really good remedy as a food, but also helps your gut flora. So you have on the one hand a therapeutic effect with the clove, and all you need, if you want to make a cup of clove, all you need is about 3 cloves, Just crush it up in a little mortar with a pestle and take that and put it in a cup. And pour boiling water into it and just leave it alone. Don't touch it. When it gets to room temperature, then you can use it. Just strain it out and you can hold it, and that can stay for 2 weeks without any spoiling or fermenting. Anything that could last long has a high life force. Coconut is one of those. Dry coconut, you take a piece of dry coconut, you pat it so that it doesn't carry any water. You could leave it in your desk for a year, 2 years, because it has a high life force. So you want to eat foods that carry high life force. So these are good remedies that you will be soon available in Ishtara for everybody. Yes, it will help to balance the whole female stuff. Well, today, no. I think Nanash is hearing about this for the first time. You see, in the past when Nanash first came to work with us, when he and this? No. These are separate remedies. Well, listen, I'll tell you what I do. I have a bottle with ghee and moringa, a bottle with turmeric and moringa. Sorry, turmeric and ghee, and with black seed, and we also have ghee with clove, enhanced with clove. I think Nanash started that project. And I think that's some of that. We still have available downstairs, right, for sale. Not enough for tea. But the thing about that is that, okay, you have all of these are powerful medicines that you can use from time to time. And I said to somebody during the break time, if you have all of these mixed, the ghee preserves all the things, so they could stay outside. Here's the thing. When you wake up in the morning, intuitively, all of these are food, but they are medicines. What do you need intuitively? You take that. You might take a teaspoon of turmeric with the ghee, and you just put the spoon and everything in the cup, pour some water, hot water or boiling water, and mix and drink. My favorite, in the morning time, I like to use turmeric a lot of times. During the day, I would use the moringa one. And my nighttime one is, what I did is I took pure cocoa powder, which has a lot of polyphenols, right? Has a lot of nutrients in cocoa. And I take the powder and I mix it with ghee. And every night, I like a black drink, because that's nighttime. So I take half a teaspoon of the cocoa and ghee and put it in a cup and pour boiling water. And then I put a teaspoon of molasses, still black, right? And I mix that and I drink that regularly every night. In the morning time, I go for like yellow stuff. That's just in the morning sunlight. And so you develop these and you will find your own way to do things as well. What comes to you. What I'm saying is you don't have to follow Harry Ramnarine and everything. Get these available, Maureen, and you have them available. They will last. So you have about 3 or 4. And on a daily basis, what do you need today? And you go with that. Use your intuition. Yes? Turmeric? Well, here's what the problem is. You have a lot of stuff high in oxalates. But here's the thing. If you use it right, and the right amount, you'll have no problem. Seriously. If you take half a teaspoon or a level teaspoon, which is a small amount, the ghee together with that is going to work perfect for you.
I use the turmeric, and I mix that with ginger and make a little tea.
Yeah, well, we have done some research and we created a mixture with turmeric, ginger, and that was one that we did about 30, 40 years ago. And then in the last few years, we added coriander, which actually has a good effect as a detox liver remedy, as well as cleansing the body. And so that mixture could be mixed. So all these have their place. If you want to mix the cinnamon with ghee, cinnamon has a powerful effect, antioxidant effects on your liver, as well as with diabetes and all these things. So I just given you some ideas of things that you could do, but whatever comes to you, use the ghee as a common, mixture and it preserves it. as I was just saying, if you're listening, I use cocoa powder with ghee, and I have that with some molasses in the night.
Does ghee break your fast or does it break your fast?
Yes, yes. Anything that you're going to take in that is calories or... So good fats are really healthy for you. Good fats are olive oil. We found one olive oil that we actually sell in our practice. It's called Olivie. And that's one of the best olive oils we have available. The therapeutic effect of that small amount on a daily basis is fantastic. Since we got that, we realized that all olive oils are not olive oils. You know, so the one is a small bottle like this, and it's just a teaspoon from time to time. It's fantastic. The testing on that is really... Yeah, well, the thing is, what I would say, since we got the Olivie, that is a therapeutic oil. You don't use that for cooking and so on. You take a teaspoon with it. It has a whole lot of healing effects, right? That's a separate category. The ordinary olive oils that we have in Trinidad, the James Flaniol, if I am pronouncing the French right, is the one that we use ourselves, but we also buy different brands, good ones that we see. So you have a lot of olive oil in the market. But olive oil is like wine. Yeah? You can buy a $1,000 bottle of wine, and you can buy a $65 bottle of wine, and if you drink it, you know the difference between the two, right? So olive oil is like that too, and there's a whole olive oil. I don't know if they call it a mafia that controls olive oil in the world. And I do not know if you knew that there was a case in the US where they charged a company for adulterating olive oil. They use canola oil, colorants, and some olive oil. And they went to court, and they won the case. Here they won the case. The lawyer argued that they bought it from a company as olive oil, and the company was one of their companies. So they were not to blame. So the company wasn't taken to court, they were taken to court. But that's how they beat the system. All right, so any other question?
Maybe you can say like this ginger and things like that. Can you use the fresh product?
Right. All right. So to me, there's very little difference between the fresh product and those that are done properly. And I'm talking about done properly, meaning that they're not mixed with any kind of crap in there. But essentially, in all the testing that we have done, if you take fresh turmeric, but here's the thing. If you have to use fresh ginger or fresh turmeric, I'm not saying they are bad, but you'd have to use a lot more, because when you take turmeric and you get it down to a powder, a little bit of powder is quite a lot. For instance, let's say cayenne. Cayenne is a wonderful herbal medicine that everybody should be using because it keeps your blood with the right viscosity. If there's something that will keep your blood from actually clotting. Now, we would take aspirin and various blood thinners in medical profession to thin your blood. But guess what? You can always end up with a bleed somewhere. In your stomach, in your brain, somewhere you can have a bleed. But you don't have a bleed from cayenne. What cayenne does, if your blood gets too thick, then you can form clots. If your blood is too thin, you can bleed. So when you take blood thinners, you can get a bleed. So now, if you look at keeping your right viscosity, the correct viscosity, which is not too thin or not too thick, if you're looking for a substance that will do that, is cayenne. Now, me, I have trouble with pepper. So it took me several months to be able to swallow a capsule, and I was feeling like fire in the stomach. But now I'm accustomed to it. So it took me several months to get there because I think Zarima is not here, but I used to threaten her, warn her, really threaten her sometimes. Said, I'll put you out of the kitchen. So at one point, she would always have an excuse and say, it's the, what's the name of the pepper that is not hot? Pimentos. So I said, Zarima, bite the thing before you put it in a pot. But she wouldn't do that because when I get a piece of, I'm always the one to get the piece of pepper. And it then makes a mess of all my taste buds, and I can't enjoy the food anymore. But every day I still have to deal with that. But I can take the capsule now. If you open a capsule, you'll be surprised how much cayenne you have in a capsule. So you'd have to eat a lot of pepper, but if you swallow a capsule, and the cayenne is not expensive. I think it's about $60, $70 for about 100 capsules. From time to time, I take one every day. I mean, not every day, but daily. From time to time, I'll take it. So that's a wonderful product to keep your blood flowing. All right. If we don't have any more questions, well, I want to thank you all for coming. It gives me the opportunity to speak. And